members. The Deputy Speaker.
Are there any constituency statements by honourable members? I call the member for Mackellar.
Thank you, Speaker. My beautiful electorate of Mackellar on Sydney's northern beaches is not only a nature lover's paradise, it is also an absolute hub of arts and culture. So many of Australia's accomplished artists call Mackellar home, from musicians to painters and writers to actors. The fine arts have a long and treasured history on the northern beaches, and they enrich all our lives daily. But we are at a time when the creative community is often doing it tough on many fronts. Recently, I was visited by a local group of voice actors and a representative from the National Association of Voice Actors. Voice actors are people who lend their voices to TV and radio programs and commercials, podcasts, movies, audiobooks, video games, and more. They came to see me because of the rapid and alarming trend they are seeing in their industry. The use of artificial intelligence to clone and usurp actors and famous people's voices. For example, as reported in the Sydney Morning Herald in December 22, Cooper Mortlock landed a steady gig as one of 5 voice artists working on an animated online series. He signed a contract for 52 episodes to be recorded over 12 months, but when it reached episode 30, his contract was cancelled. Then about a year later, the producer released another episode using an AI clone of his voice and the voices of the other actors. Even Scarlett Johansson recently alleged that OpenAI used an AI-generated version of her voice for its personalised digital assistants. This happened after she had declined permission for her actual voice to be used in the app. As it now stands, 90% of voice actors in Australia are moderately to extremely concerned by the potential for the theft of their intellectual and creative work. Sadly, this is already happening, and voice actors' art and livelihoods are under real threat. The Australian Association of Voice Actors recently gave evidence to a Senate committee on artificial intelligence, stating that the jobs of around 500 Australian voice actors are already in danger from AI. Australia is lagging far behind other regions of the world when it comes to the protection of personally identifiable information. We need to follow the lead of the EU and their world-leading General Data Protection Regulation, whereby voice is regarded as a special type of biometric personal data, for which consent of use should be explicit opt-in, renewed regularly, and must be 100% independent of work contracts. This is an issue that needs urgent and decisive action and legislation.
Time has expired, and I call the member for Canberra.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. This month, Canberra lost a giant. Terry Snow passed away aged 80, leaving a legacy as one of Canberra's greatest visionaries and philanthropists. Few could claim to have left such a mark on our city or changed the lives of so many as Terry Snow. Terry was the grandson of Canberra's first general store owner and went on to become one of Australia's most successful property and commercial developers. One of Mr Snow's greatest contributions to Canberra was the redevelopment of the Canberra Airport precinct. In 1998, Mr Snow purchased land from the government and transformed what was a small airport surrounded by farmland into the impressive modern airport that many people in this building would be very familiar with. His work saw passenger numbers double and international carriers now in residence. As said by Mr Snow, we have transformed our vision into reality for this city, and it is something of which I am incredibly proud. The Snow family also agreed to develop the suburb of Denman Prospect, a new and beautiful suburb in the electorate of Bean. Mr Snow was a generous and committed philanthropist. His belief that if you see someone struggling, you give them a helping hand guided his generosity. The establishment of the Snow Foundation with his brother George in 1991 allowed Mr Snow to help quiet achievers in the Canberra community and provide funding to a diverse range of projects. These included projects helping people with disability and people experiencing homelessness. More recently, he established Snow Medical, a research foundation that provides a fellowship for the next generation of emerging research leaders to change the face of healthcare in Australia. His family credits his deep sense of social responsibility as the driving factor for the creation of this organisation. Mr Snow was appointed a member of the Order of Australia in 2006 for service to the building and construction industry, particularly the redevelopment of the Canberra International Airport precinct and his support for charitable organisations. He was also played an important role in saving the New South Wales south coast town of Borley Point during the 2020 Black Summer bushfires due to his intricate fire safety plan developed to protect his beloved horses and staff at his equestrian arena meant that this property was safe from one of the worst bushfires seen in recent history, and firefighters could focus their efforts on saving the town of Borley Point. His desire to protect and help all people has had a phenomenal impact on so many people. He made an incredible contribution to our city and the lives of so many. My thoughts are with his family, his wife Jeanette, and his children Scarlett Gaffey, Tom Snow, Georgina Byron and Stephen Byron, and his 14 grandchildren. Vale Terry Snow, and thank you.
I call the member for Cook.
Cronulla Surf Lifesaving Club is the oldest of the 4 Bait Bay surf clubs, having been formed in 1907. I had the privilege last month of attending their end-of-year presentation awards, and I'd like to congratulate Chris Ordens, the recipient of the Bill Marshall OAM Memorial Award for Patrol Person of the Year. I'd also like to honour Jay Furness, who has been awarded the Tony Purcell Memorial Award for his exceptional contribution at the Australian Surf Lifesaving Championships. Gregory Hewitt has also been recognised with the Gibson Howland Lawyers Award for member of his efforts in fundraising and innovation. Gregory Hewitt has also been recognised with the Gibson Howland Lawyers Award for member for efforts in fundraising. Isabel Turner has also been awarded the Gibson Howland Lawyers Award for her efforts in enhancing the reputation of the club. David Dalla Camina has also been honoured with the Gibson Howland Lawyers Award for his efforts in instruction and training of club members. The Luke and Jack Gibson Memorial Award for the most inspirational member went to Casey Diver Tuck. In the Masters Competition of the Year category, we congratulated John Pleasance. The Ken Brown Award for competitor who contributed the most to the beach section at the Aussie Award went to Nathan Breen. Steve Tatham and Gary Allen have been jointly awarded the Nick Dixon Memorial Boatman's Trophy. Sylvia Harvey is recognised for her outstanding contribution to the IRB section. The award for Outstanding Official went to Sophie Gilbert. We also congratulated Chris Barber, who received the Instructors Award. In the Under-15 category for Junior Club Person of the Year, there was 2 outstanding members, Henry Schneider and Sioshu O'Brien. In the Under-17s category for Junior Club Person of the Year, Melvin Gilbert and Lucy Aitken were recognised. For the Under-19 category, Noah Duche Catherine was awarded, and lastly, Zoe Duche Catherine was awarded the Most Improved Member. I'd also like to take this opportunity to shout out Allura Surf Lifesaving Club's National Championships. For winning the Men's 160s Master Boat Championship, Grant Wilkinson, Matt Guy, David Frew, Matt Norton and Daniel Elise Flint, and the Men's Open Beach Sprint, Michael Hanna. Lastly, I'd like to congratulate Laura Bennett for winning the beach run, the beach sprint, the flags wade race, the surf race and the board race at the Australian Adaptive Youth Championship, and is Allura's first national champion from this event. Well done.
Call the member for Moreton.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Having the right to protest is a vital part of being a democracy. For me, free speech is a foundational belief. Protests allow all Australians to feel seen and heard about the issues that matter to us. I'll never speak out against Australians' right to protest. Unfortunately, lately we've seen some far from peaceful protests. There's been property damage at electorate offices, intimidation of employees, and offices shut to constituents for their own safety. Elderly attendees at a Labor Party dinner in Brisbane a few weeks ago received verbal abuse and were even spat at, shoved and punched. I was there, and what deeply concerned me was who the protesters were. This concern was echoed by a group of respected Muslim leaders I met with recently. I've had protesters at my office who all look like me. And at the dinner in Brisbane, so did many of the protesters. Yet when these people return to their comfortable homes in their leafy suburbs and hang up their keffers in their walk-in wardrobes, who will bear the brunt of public anger about the pushing and punching and spitting? The Muslim leaders I met with are worried that it will be their community members who will be targeted. Their children who wear the clothes of their faith will be blamed and bullied. They're concerned the abiding image of the protests and destruction of property will be that of the angry and violent Muslim. These aren't my words. That's a quote from the discussion I attended. This image does not ring true in Moreton, where we prefer to share a meal and discuss matters, even the ones we disagree on, with sensitivity, with respect, and with the aim of finding a constructive solution. Sadly, being tarnished with this image is familiar for many in the Muslim community. The memories of the aftermath of 9/11 are still strong. Many Muslims going about their everyday lives were vilified, harassed, and discriminated against. More recently, we have seen the abhorrent vandalism of mosques, including a hateful act of leaving a pig's head at the door of one. And during the last federal election, far-right fringe political parties espoused anti-Islamic immigration agendas. Is it any wonder that Muslim leaders are now worried about a similar pattern emerging? They're concerned about the politicisation in Australia of the war in Gaza, deflecting attention from the absolute necessity to focus on a ceasefire and the provision of desperately needed humanitarian aid, not just in Gaza, but also in the Horn of Africa and other conflict areas. Deputy Speaker, thankfully, the violent and abusive rent-a-crowd protesters are a small minority in this country. The responsible amongst us are continuing to strengthen relationships in our communities. That is what will keep modern multicultural Australia strong and cohesive. And that is what all representatives in this chamber from all parties should be doing. As the representative for Moreton, the most multicultural seat in Queensland, I'm proud to work on harmony always.
I call the member for Capricornia.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On the 1st of July, the Rockhampton region lost a legend of local government, a loyal friend to many and devoted father and husband, Councillor Neil Fischer. Neil's commitment to our region was unwavering, and he served our community with integrity and passion. His relentless efforts to enhance Rockhampton's region was nothing short of inspiring. Over the years, Neil's contributions have left an enduring mark on our local government and on the hearts of the people he served. One of Neil's most significant achievements was his passionate advocacy for the Rockhampton Airport. Neil's tireless work secured vital upgrades to the airport to ensure it could better serve our community. It was an honour for me to be able to deliver the funding necessary to bring his plans to life through terminal upgrades and establishing an aircraft maintenance facility. This work exemplified his vision for a prosperous future and his steadfast commitment to improving our community's infrastructure. Not only was Neil known for his love of aviation, but also for his love of horticulture. This was evident in his involvement in the beautification of many spaces across the local government area. Neil inspired many to take up gardening through his weekly horticulture segment on the local news. Personally, I gained invaluable knowledge from Neil, especially about growing orchids. Beyond his professional achievements, Neil was a man of immense character, compassion and warmth. His kindness and generosity touched countless lives. If there was a charity event, you could be sure Neil was there to provide support and a listening ear to those who needed it most. I will be forever grateful for Neil's unwavering support during my campaign to become Federal Member for Capricornia. His guidance and encouragement were vital to my success, and his belief in my vision served as a source of great strength and inspiration. I extend my deepest condolences to Neil's wife Sherry and his children Jasmine, Corey, Gabrielle, James and son-in-law Anthony, as well as his granddaughters Ruby and Lola and mum Shirley. Today, as we remember Councillor Neil Fischer, let us honour his legacy of service, friendship and community spirit. He will be greatly missed, but his impact will forever resonate in the Rockhampton community. Thank you.
I call the member for Gilmore.
Today in the Australian Parliament, I would like to recognise Councillor Greg Watson from Shoalhaven City Council, who has recently celebrated an amazing 50 years as a councillor and mayor and is retiring. I can honestly say that I have had the privilege of Greg Watson knowing me my entire life. We both lived at Torreira when I was young, and it was Greg Watson, just before he was elected in 1974, that rescued me as a 4-year-old from my family's dairy farm from the massive floods at Torreira. In true Greg Watson style, he used his truck to evacuate people from the community. And as a youngster, I was put in the front of the truck as we were evacuated into town. Greg was first elected as an alderman to Shoalhaven Shire Council in 1974. But as a young person growing up in the town, I have many fond memories, and I can honestly say that Greg was there every step of the way. Greg was a master at always thinking ahead, a political strategist, a relationship builder, a problem solver, and someone that always has the community at heart. And it was those qualities that were appreciated, and seeing that Greg achieved so much for the Shoalhaven. Whether it was establishing Flinders Industrial Estate, sealing roads, the REMS scheme, the Aviation Technology Park, the Shoalhaven Entertainment Centre and more, what Greg achieved was nothing short of astounding. Greg's practical and proactive approach made Greg very popular electorally. It was Greg's idea to turn the Shoalhaven Shire into the city of the Shoalhaven, and that's what happened in 1979. Greg made sure that every school child received a commemorative coin. I certainly received mine at Torreira Public School, and there was a huge street party in Nowra. But it was when I was a mum with my own young kids myself that Greg re-entered my life in a more prominent way. It was the Save the Nowra Pool campaign from September 2009 to 2015, where Greg would answer any of my questions. Greg provided advice when I asked, but never expected for me to agree. But that's what Greg did. He was a mentor and always made time to help others. It was Greg Watson that encouraged me to enter into politics, and I suspect that Greg's main interest was that people entering politics should be doing so for the right reasons, for an absolute love of community, a genuineness and a true desire to serve our community for the better. Thank you, Councillor Greg Watson. You have left an incredible legacy and gift for us all from your dedication over the past 5 decades.
Call the member for Barara.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. The Normanhurst Eagles Football Club is one of the most successful in my area, with nearly 1,000 players, one of the highest women's participations across 79 teams and 5 wins across different competitions. But a great club should have great facilities to match. This year, too many of the club's games were called off due to the inadequacy of the oval. The Normanhurst Eagles clubhouse, which they share with the Normanhurst Cricket Club, is not fit for purpose. The change rooms are from the 1970s and don't adequately serve the growing women's participation. Smashed windows are from another era, and the rickety stairs exclude people with disability. I'll always be a champion for our local sporting clubs because, like Normo Eagles, they play a vital role in creating healthy and active young people and a love of sport, and they foster belonging in our community. One of the reasons I fought so hard for better telco in the Barara electorate is because our electorate's prone to bushfires and floods, and I want to do everything I can to back in the RFS and emergency service personnel in keeping our community safe. So it concerns me when I hear mobile communications are so bad that volunteers at the Hillside RFS struggle to get phone calls in and out of their station. This is 2024 and this is metropolitan Sydney. I'm sick of the chronic underservicing of my electorate by the telcos. They're endangering life and limb when they don't adequately service the RFS and our bushfire-prone areas. I'll always fight to ensure that emergency service personnel have what they need to continue to support our community. John Macaulay recently celebrated his 100th birthday. A remarkable Australian and the head of one of my electorate's most significant families, John enjoyed a distinguished career as an economist, which culminated in the role of the chief economist of the State Bank. With a lively intellect, I always look forward to receiving John's insightful commentary following every federal budget. In 1946, John married Margaret O'Connor. They had 3 children and 9 grandchildren and 25 great-grandchildren. John served in the radar section of the RAAF in New Guinea in World War II, and this year was the only World War II veteran to march the full length of the Sydney Anzac Day March. John, on behalf of the Barara community and the people of Australia, I wish you a very happy 100th birthday. Telecommunications is not a nice to have, it's a right. In 2016, I promised to deliver a new mobile phone tower to the Brooklyn-Dangar Island area. Despite Telstra's attempts to frustrate the project and come up with inappropriate locations, through working with the Dangar Island community and never giving up the fight, we've achieved a great outcome. Telstra and NBN wanted to leave Brooklyn and Dangar Island behind, but in both cases, I've delivered better mobile and NBN services as a direct result of my advocacy. Improved telecommunications is about making it easier for emergency service personnel to do their job. It's about ensuring people can work or study from home, and it's about building future capacity for technological improvements. I'm so proud to have worked with a great community to deliver this vital outcome and ensure people have the telco they need to operate in the modern world.
Call the member for Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Last weekend, I attended the Bacchus Marsh 3340 Volunteer Network Lunch at the newly completed Darley Pavilion. This gathering brought together over 100 volunteers from across the 3340 postcode to celebrate their tireless efforts in support of our community. This event was not only an acknowledgement of the incredible work our volunteers do, but also an opportunity for these inspiring individuals and groups to connect, share their experiences, and strengthen the bonds that make our community such a special place to live. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Claire Sutherland and Ian Prince, as well as all of the staff from Community Bank Bacchus Marsh, and also John Cutler from the Darley Park Community and Sports Centre for their hard work in organising this fantastic event. Yesterday was Vietnam Veterans Day and the 58th anniversary of the Battle of Long Tan. This occasion serves as a solemn reminder of the service and sacrifice of our brave service personnel. I recently had the privilege of meeting with the Melton Vietnam Veterans Association to discuss the commemoration. Their dedication to honouring our fallen soldiers and supporting our veterans is truly incredible. The association's motto, "Remember the dead and fight like hell for the living," reflects their unwavering commitment to both memory and action. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Wayne, to Jim, and all the members of the association for having me, and indeed for their tireless efforts and continuing service to our community, and particularly our valued veterans. The Albanese government is committed to backing Australian science and technology, and the Maker Project's grants are a testament to this commitment. These grants, ranging from $20,000 to $100,000, support organisations in delivering projects that help students and young people develop and apply their STEM knowledge. In my electorate of Hawke, we are already seeing the benefits locally. Thanks to a $70,996 Maker Projects grant in 2022, Science Play Kids is providing schools like Ballyang East Primary with access to free STEM kits. This initiative is equipping our students with the tools and the inspiration that they need to explore the very exciting world of STEM. Last week, I had the pleasure of visiting Ballyang East Primary School to witness all of the incredible work being done in this space. I want to extend my thanks to Principal Karen and Business Manager Melanie for showing me around, and to all the teachers and educators across our community for their dedication in inspiring the next generation of STEM professionals.
I call the member for Forrest.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. With the 2024 Paris Olympics wrapped up, I wanted to take the opportunity to congratulate the athletes who are originally from my electorate who competed. The Southwest is really proud of producing 6 Olympians and 1 Paralympian. Kyle Lee from Australind in marathon swimming, Aaron Zalewski from Margaret River in hockey, and Jake Harvey from Dardaner in hockey. Lauren Reynolds from Bunbury in BMX cycling, Nina Kennedy originally from Bustleton in the pole vault, Jack Robinson from Margaret River in the surfing competition, and Alex Safi, also known as the Bunbury Bullet, competing in Paralympic swimming. Well, congratulations to Jack Robinson, who brings home the silver medal in surfing, beating 3-time world champion Gabriel Medina of Brazil to claim a place in the thrilling final. Nina Kennedy, well, how good is that? Our golden girl. Nina won the gold medal for her pole vault of 4.90 metres and made history as the first Australian woman to win gold in a field event. So congratulations, Nina, what an awesome result. And our South West Academy of Sport alumni, Kyle Lee, on his first Olympic experience, who finished in the top 20 of the marathon swimming. He was cheered on by his family who went to travel with him to Paris. Lauren Reynolds made history at the Games, becoming only the 5th BMX rider to compete in 4 Olympics. And well done to Aaron and Jake, who fought hard in the Kookaburras and made it to the quarterfinals of the men's hockey. But with the Paralympics up next, I can't wait to see how Alex Saffy goes. And as we know, all of Bunbury is well behind Alex Saffy. I want to really thank all of those athletes and their families who have dedicated their lives often. Countless hours of training, of preparation, of hard work and cost, and a lot of commitment by the families that support them. You have done yourselves and Australia proud. Nothing should overshadow or diminish the focus on your commitment, your hard work, and your achievements that have been achieved through countless hours of hard work and sheer dedication, often at all hours of the day and night. Please don't forget, the excitement is not over yet. The Paralympics is just 2 weeks away, and we want to celebrate all over again with our Australian athletes. And as you would understand, with Alex Saffy from Bunbury in the swimming, certainly the southwestern people in Bunbury will be watching this with a great deal of interest and excitement. Thanks, Deputy Speaker.
I call the member for Robertson.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I rise on this occasion to acknowledge Julie Donaldson, a local intensive care nurse at Gosford Hospital, who has put away her stethoscope for the last time and retired from her nursing career. Julie's career spans 35 years, and she started working in the intensive care unit at Gosford Hospital in 1989 and has an impressive list of achievements under her belt. For anyone who happened to work alongside Julie, they will know the incredible dedication, commitment, passion, compassion and exceptional care she tirelessly brought to her nursing career. Julie always provided outstanding care and assistance to patients in the ICU, never losing composure and unfaltering. She confronted any challenge with perseverance and a sense of calmness. Often a source of wisdom and knowledge, Julie would be sought after by doctors and colleagues for advice on all manner of circumstances. A facilitator of further training and education for fellow nurses, she was always looking for ways to strengthen the profession and build up the skills of her colleagues. Julie was also responsible for helping to establish the baby basket for those babies who started their lives in the ICU. These baby baskets go a long way in helping parents of newborns provide the best care possible for their young baby. Julie's charitable endeavours did not stop here. She initiated the 100 Club that aims to support multiple charities on the Central Coast and right across Australia. A truly selfless public servant, always putting others first and never seeking recognition for all the amazing work that she has undertaken. Julie is the personification of humility and an inspiration to many who knew her and who have worked alongside her. She has set the bar high, and I know that our community will miss her dearly in her retirement. I'll now read a couple of thank you messages sent to me from her colleagues at Gosford Hospital. From Jodie: "It was always a pleasure working with you. Your knowledge has no bounds, absolutely endless. We had many a fun night shift. Congratulations on a stellar career, my friend. Now to enjoy your retirement. So deserved, congratulations." And from Kath: "Well, the guru is finally hanging up her stethoscope. A sad day for staff and patients. Julie, I have loved working with you back in my ICU days. So much knowledge and compassion that made you one of the best nurses ever. I will always treasure my memories of us working together." So Julie, on behalf of the people of the Central Coast, I want to express my thanks and my gratitude to you for your service as a nurse for the last 35 years. Congratulations on a phenomenal career. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
In accordance with Standing Order 193, the time for members' constituency statements has concluded, and I call the clerk.
Private members' business, notice number 1, motion relating to early childhood education and care, moved by the member for Goldstein.
I call the member for Goldstein.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move the motion relating to early childhood education and care in the terms in which it appears on the notice paper. I brought this motion to the House because we have a real opportunity to transform early childhood education and care in this country. It seems incredible to me that a sector as important as this is out of reach for so many families, that the cost of early childhood education is often the second highest expense in a household after the mortgage. Rising fees, staff shortages, a lack of funding and a lack of vision have plagued what should be an accessible and affordable place for children to learn. I want to start with cost because cost of living is the biggest issue facing Australians right now. The cost of early childhood education in Australia is among the highest in the OECD. For a lot of parents, the cost of care means they simply can't afford to work. It's often referred to as a cost of working crisis. The Hilda survey collects data on spending from more than 7,000 households every year. It found about 83% of families spend more on childcare than on utilities or clothing for all members of the household. 70% spend more on childcare than transport, and 30% spend more on childcare than groceries. Unaffordable childcare often results in parents, usually women, deciding not to work, beginning lifelong gendered financial disadvantage. Yet again, women are bearing the brunt of decades of male-centric priorities. But at last, the conversation is changing. The Women's Economic Equality Task Force put it firmly on the political agenda when it stated Australia should move towards adopting a universal childcare system. The Productivity Commission's draft report has also recommended that every child have access to 3 days of quality childcare a week, and for families earning less than $80,000, it should be free. And the Prime Minister has given his commitment to working towards a universal system. This is a commitment that I not only support, but it's also one that I will fight to see delivered for women, for families, for children and for the economy. Women in Australia are among the most highly educated in the world and have similar levels of labour force participation to men until they have children, when they begin to fall behind and never catch up. The differences are most pronounced in families with children under the age of 5. The extent to which childcare is available and affordable has consistently been found to lift rates of female participation. The Impact Economics and Policy 2023 report found that if labour force participation rates for females in families with children under 5 were to increase to match male participation rates, there would be an additional 301,000 women in families with children under 5 in the labour force. Our job as policymakers is to remove this barrier of returning to work for the sake of women, families and the economy. Yes, affordable and accessible childcare is critical to growing the economy. More women working boosts economic growth and tax revenue. And of course, early childhood education is crucial for children. By the age of 5, 90% of a child's brain is fully developed. Children who attend quality early childhood education are twice as likely to reach their development targets when they get to school. Early childhood education is the golden ticket. Children, families, women, the economy. It ticks all the boxes. And this is why we must find a timely pathway to a universal system. I support the Productivity Commission and the Centre for Policy Development recommendations that every child have access to 3 days of quality childcare a week as a first step. It would give all children the start they need by increasing attendance, especially for those experiencing disadvantage. It would help alleviate cost of living stress for families, and it would advance gender equality by getting women back into the workforce. The government's decision to fund a 15% pay increase for educators, which I strongly fought for, is also a win for gender equality in the female-dominated early childhood sector. A valued and respected workforce underpins everything. Now is the time to start shaping the system we want for our children. More than 25 years ago, Quebec introduced universal $5 a day daycare, and today the workforce participation rate for women aged 25 to 54 is 89.4%. Increased tax paid by those working women has entirely offset the cost, and Canada is now introducing $10 a day childcare to the rest of the country. Now is Australia's chance, Deputy Speaker, to move with certainty in the same direction. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Member for Wentworth?
Motion and reserve my right to speak.
And I call the member for Lyons.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I thank the member for Goldstein for raising this private member's business and allowing me to reflect on the important work that the Albanese Labor government is undertaking in the area of early childhood education and care. Our government is committed to recognising and harnessing the transformative benefits early childhood education provides for children and families across the country. The member for Goldstein has well articulated those. Deputy Speaker, the Australian government understands the early years of a child's life are crucial. This period lays the foundation for cognitive, social and emotional development. Investing in early childhood education is not just about the present, it's about shaping a better future. It's about providing every child with the opportunity to thrive, regardless of background or circumstance. And that's why we are on the path to building a universal early childhood education and care system accessible for all families. It takes time, member for Goldstein, but we'll get there, I'm sure. In pursuit of this aim, the Australian Labor government has already taken significant steps to make early childhood education and care more accessible for more Australian families. Our cheaper childcare reforms are testament to this commitment, making early childhood education more affordable for more than 1 million families. These reforms have reduced out-of-pocket costs for centre-based daycare by 11%, while preserving higher subsidies for families with multiple children in care. In total, these changes benefit more than 1 million families, including 265,000 families in regional Australia. The Australian Labor government's commitment to the sector extends beyond affordability. We recognise the quality of early childhood education is intrinsically linked to the well-being of those who provide it. Early learning educators and teachers play a vital role in both the lives of our youngest Australians and in enabling millions of Australians, mostly women, to balance work and family life. After just 2 years of Labor government, the early childhood education and care sector has grown by more than 30,000 workers, and this is a direct result of our efforts to collaborate with the sector to develop practical solutions for staff retention and strengthen recruitment and training. The Australian Labor government has provided more university places for early childhood education teachers. We've introduced fee-free TAFE and supported pay increases totalling 14.85% in just 2 years. And just this month, the Australian Labor government delivered an historic achievement, a 15% wage increase for early childhood workers phased in over 2 years starting in December this year. This increase, the largest ever for these essential workers, will significantly improve the livelihoods of our educators. For example, a typical educator will see a rise of at least $103 a week, increasing to $155 by December 2025. Early childhood teachers will see their pay increase by $166 a week, reaching $249 by the end of the 2-year period. This will improve retention and recruitment and better recognises the vital work early childhood educators do. It represents a $3.56 billion commitment to our educators, with the conditions ensuring funds are passed directly to workers through increased wages and with a limit of 4.4% being put on providers in terms of fee increases. That's important. Now, Deputy Speaker, the Liberals dismiss this significant wage increase as mere a few dollars a week. And these are the same people who said 2 years ago that a $1 rise in the minimum wage would wreck the economy. The fact is, it doesn't matter what argument they mount, the Liberals always oppose pay rises for Australian workers. And while on the topic of the Liberals, it's got to be said, Deputy Speaker, the Liberal Senator, Gerard Rennick, making claims that childcare will destroy the family unit and that it brainwashes children early with the woke mind virus. I'm just absolutely appalled by these comments, and appalled even more so by the fact that the opposition leader is standing by that senator with that. We knew that under the opposition leader, Mr Dutton, there would be a shift to the right. I don't think we anticipated the shift to the weird. Deputy Speaker, I'd like to thank, before I go, the United Workers Union in Tasmania, led by Amy Brumby, and lead organiser Joe Murphy for the incredible work they've been doing in representing early childhood care workers and fighting for fairer conditions for them. This wouldn't have happened without the incredible work that they have done. Thank you.
I call the member for Wentworth.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The first years of a child's life set them up for success. By the age of 5, a child's brain is almost fully developed, with vision, hearing, vocabulary, personality, social skills and cognitive function all growing exponentially during the early years. Studies show that children who attend quality early childhood education during these years are twice as likely to reach their developmental targets once at school. Early childhood education is a critical factor for our future productivity and actually equality of opportunities for all. But it is also critical for women and economic empowerment, because despite the progress we've made, the care role continues to fall to women, with 35% of women citing caring for children as the reason for not being in the workforce or for not taking on more hours, compared with only 7.5% of men. This plays out through lower financial outcomes, including superannuation and greater dependence on male partners. Ensuring access to childcare sounds like a no-brainer, and while some parents do prefer to care for their children themselves during these precious early years, the reality for many is that it's not a matter of choice. There are real challenges across Australia and on the ground for families trying to access quality and affordable early childhood education, including in my community of Wentworth. In Paddington just a few weeks ago, I spoke with several young families who told me that the mothers were thinking of leaving the workforce or not going back as fast as they would like to because of childcare costs. Some were even contemplating not having a second child. Many families in my electorate of Wentworth pay up to $200 a day for childcare, which, with a family for 2 children, costs about $60,000 a year, even for part-time care. Waiting lists can be several years long, even if you enrol your kids before they're born, and you're not even guaranteed a place before their first birthday. There are subsidies that are available, but they taper out, so it's many educated women, with strong professional careers who are making those decisions not to engage in the workforce as much as they would like to, and that is a problem for everyone. Because this is, Australia has, as the member for Goldstein mentioned, some of the most highest cost early childhood education in the OECD, and with childcare costs being a critical cost of living issue in this country. But speaking to educators, it's no wonder it's so hard to find affordable childcare, because working conditions can be tough, the days are long, and it's hard to retain good quality staff, despite the demand, because childcare workers remain some of the lowest paid workers in Australia, with an average salary of just over $60,000. And it's not just the costs. Childcare workers get into the profession because they love dealing with children. But the current regulatory settings mean that I constantly hear from childcare centres in my electorate is that the box ticking and the paperwork is taking our childcare workers more and more away from the work that they do and with the kids and more into the paperwork. And that is not something they want, nor what is best for the quality of care for our kids. These are systemic problems that can't be solved overnight. And I do want to acknowledge the significant progress that has been made during this term of Parliament, and which myself and others really push for. Well, because childcare costs were reduced for about 1.2 million families last year through the increase in the child subsidy rate, and this is an area that I strongly supported. And childcare workers are soon going to receive a welcome and long overdue 15% pay rise. Again, something I strongly support and is highly deserved. These are positive steps forward. And it's no coincidence that they've come at a time when there are record numbers of women in Parliament, although notably not on all benches in the House. But we are being tentative in an area where the economic case, where the social case, where the case for opportunity, where the case for women's empowerment is so clear. Deputy Speaker, my country and my community wants us to be a country where every Australian family can access early education and care that is affordable. And that's what this motion today is all about. I urge the government, who have said good words about universality of childcare and good words about affordability, but I urge the government to set out a timeline and a pathway to achieving this goal, which reduces the financial burden on families. Building on the experiences of Quebec and places where the cost of this sort of policy has been offset by the increase in women's tax payments. which ensures that our early educators are properly paid for the amazing work that they do, and which reduces the burden of red tape and bureaucracy, which actually drives some really good people out of early childhood education and care, because that's not what they got in there for. They got in there for the kids. This is time to take real action in this parliament.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Pearce.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise today to reaffirm the Albanese Labor Government's deep commitment to early childhood education and care. We understand how transformative early education can be, not just for our children, but for families across the country. It forms a foundation for future successes and strengths, the social and economic fabric of our society. Our goal is simple: to build a universal early childhood education and care system that is accessible for all families, regardless of your circumstances or background. Every child deserves the best start in life, and every family should have access to affordable, high-quality early education. We know that children who experience disadvantage and vulnerability are those who stand to benefit the most from early childhood education. They are often the least likely to attend, and this inequity is something we must work hard to change. Early learning helps close for development gaps that can appear even before a child starts school. For children from disadvantaged backgrounds, early childhood education and care offers a crucial opportunity to build skills, to build confidence and a love of learning that will stay with them for life. The cheaper childcare reforms are making a real difference for over 1 million families, easing the financial burden while ensuring children receive the education they need during these critical early years. These reforms are not just about improving access to care, they are about investing in our children's futures. But it's not only the children who benefit. Early childhood education and care plays a pivotal role in supporting parents, especially mothers, by enabling them to maintain a connection to the labour force when their children are young. When affordable and quality care is available, it empowers women to return to work, continue their careers and contribute to the economy. The benefits are twofold. Families gain financial sustainability, and our economy benefits from increased workforce participation and productivity. We also recognise the vital work being done by early learning educators and children and teachers. Everyday parents trust early educators with the most important people in their world, and everyday Australians ask early educators to do one of the most important jobs imaginable, shaping the future of our children. That is why we're making sure these educators are fairly paid. The Albanese Labor Government will fund a 15% wage increase for early childhood education and care workers. This significant wage increase is a critical next step in our ongoing reform to the sector, building on the success of our cheaper childcare changes. Importantly, this wage increase will be tied to a commitment from childcare centres to limit fee increases. We want to ensure that workers are fairly paid without the cost being passed on to families. This commitment will help retain our existing early childhood educators, who are predominantly women, and attract new employees into this vital sector. This is better for parents, better for educators, and good for Australian businesses. By improving access to quality early childhood education and care, we can also boost productivity and workforce participation both in the short and long term. This benefit doesn't just extend to early childhood centres. The wage increase will also apply to workers in outside hours care services, creating significant advantages for the parents of school-aged children. This increase will be phased in over 2 years, beginning with a 10% rise from December 24, followed by a further 5% increase from December 2025. This means a typical early childhood educator paid at the award rate will receive a pay rise of at least $103 per week, growing to at least $155 per week by December 2025. Early childhood education and care workers are some of the most important workers in the country, and they deserve to be paid fairly. Our $3.6 billion investment recognises the vital role that early childhood education and care workers play in preparing our children for school and for life. This is a win for workers, a win for families, and will help ease cost of living pressure. Since coming to government, we have seen that number of early childhood education and care workers grow by more than 30,000, but we need more. In my community of Pearce, there are 8 babies a day born to our local families. The Albanese Labor Government is committed to building a skilled, sustainable workforce that will help us achieve a truly universal early education system for all Australians. and the Albanese Labour Government's Cheaper Childcare Initiative ensures that early education and care will remain available and affordable for families right across the country, whilst laying the foundation for our nation's future economic successes. And I thank the member for Goldstein for bringing this to the Parliament.
The time allotted for this debate has expired. The debate is adjourned and the resumption of the debate will be made an order of the day for the next sitting, and I call the clerk.
Private members' business, notice number 2, motion relating to fee-free TAFE, moved by the member for Dunkley.
I call the member for Dunkley.
I move the motion relating to fee-free TAFE in the terms in which it appears on the notice paper.
I call the member for Dunkley.
Thank you, Acting Speaker. I speak to this excellent motion on the first day of National Skills Week. And what a fantastic week it is, because there's no government that has done more to support Australians getting the skills they need than the Albanese Labor government. Over 500,000 people have been supported by fee-free TAFE since the beginning of the program on the 1st of January 2023. That is an astonishing number. In the first year of fee-free TAFE in 2023, there were over 355,000 students enrolled, against a target of 180,000 places. Importantly, fee-free TAFE is supporting disadvantaged and in-need Australians, with 35,000 people with a disability and over 30,000 First Nations Australians taking up opportunities provided by fee-free TAFE. In my beautiful electorate of Dunkley, over 2,000 apprentices are currently working towards a nationally recognised qualification because of the program. It's motivating to see Dunkley residents benefiting from the fantastic opportunities that Labor governments provide. Fee-free TAFE has changed the lives of so many, helping address the skill shortages and helping students by removing financial barriers. Fee-free TAFE is not wasteful spending, as the Deputy Leader of the Opposition has described. It's an investment in people, their ability to have a career, the ability to support people into jobs in building and construction, childcare and nursing, areas where we have skills shortages. Whilst I did not benefit from fee-free TAFE when I was a young woman studying to be a youth worker, TAFE certainly did change my life for the better. After working as a secretary, I went to study youth work and community development at what is now Chisholm TAFE, keen to build the skills and knowledge to enable me to have a career supporting young people who are disadvantaged. My experience at TAFE was incredibly empowering. It was the impetus for me realising my capabilities and my passion supporting others to reach their potential. Studying at TAFE was the first of many steps in a love of lifelong learning. TAFE gave me the confidence to go on and complete other study, and I have now completed many other postgraduate qualifications. The last course I completed was a Certificate in Training and Education, which enabled me to become a TAFE teacher, supporting others to study youth work and community development. And now, Acting Speaker, my niece and a close friend are taking up the opportunity that fee-free TAFE provides. My niece has just applied for nursing, and Gemma from Rosie's Cafe in Frankston South has just commenced studying the Certificate in Childcare at Chisholm TAFE. Gemma said to me just yesterday, starting the Cert 3 in early childhood education has been such a positive experience. It feels good to be pursuing something I am passionate about and that I feel can make a meaningful impact to the future of our society. Fee-free TAFE has helped me begin my journey to a career that I am passionate about, and I look forward with nothing but excitement to the future. This testimonial says it all, doesn't it? Gemma is just one of the many people who wanted the opportunity to learn and have a career and needed the financial support to make this a reality. By removing financial barriers to study, fee-free TAFE is giving Australians from all walks of life the opportunity to get a secure, well-paid job with career progression, with training provided in areas of high demand and skills need. And the best part is that it is women who make up the majority of enrolments. almost 63%, with over 277,000 women taking on a qualification under this initiative. We know through the work of the Minister for Women, Katie Gallagher, that the cost to the Australian economy for women being underemployed is $28 billion per annum. Fee-free TAFE is mobilising more women into education, which leads to employment and, for many, a career, just like me. Fee-free TAFE is an exceptional policy, achieving exceptional outcomes. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for the motion?
Am I right to speak?
Member for Blair. The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Forrest.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Australia certainly needs top-class effective training. However, it won't just be the number of enrolments and commencements that are the measure of whether the Labor government spending $1.5 billion of taxpayers' funds on this policy is actually being spent wisely. The true test will be whether each one of the students who completes these courses, so the completion and the qualification rates will be the measure of this policy, as will whether the students are genuinely skilled, job-ready and able to do the jobs that employers actually require. As equally in regional areas, whether the students being in regional areas are training in the areas of particular workforce shortages. There's already concerns given that the estimates of TAFE completions are showing the failure or non-completion rate could be as high as 55 to 60%. For example, in Victoria, just 1% of those registered for a free Certificate 4 in plumbing successfully completed their training. So Labor speakers talking today need to confirm just how many of Labor's 500,000 fee-free TAFE courses have resulted in a real qualified worker and real qualification being completed. Taxpayers have a right to know how many cancellations or non-completions there have been across those enrolments. Equally, how many of these enrolments were not genuinely new places as opposed to those that were going to be there anyway without that additional $1.5 billion cost to taxpayers. The reason these details are so important is that under Labor, skills are going backwards, so completion and qualification rates are critical. The latest data released by the National Centre for Vocational Education and Research shows that Australia has lost over 85,300 apprentices and trainees from the national training pipeline since the Labor government took office, a loss of 1 in 5. This means Labor has squandered almost all the gains made by the coalition government in building up Australia's skills pipeline. It also comes at a time when Labor is bringing in over 1.15 million migrants, which is putting extraordinary pressure on housing, infrastructure, hospitals, schools and health services. And of course, we're only building 265,000 new homes. At the same time, we're seeing worsening skills shortages, unaffordable and soaring energy costs, stalling housing constructions and record insolvencies in the building sector itself. So no wonder there are 5,300 fewer construction trades worker apprentices in training since Labor took office. Added to this, new start apprentices and trainees have dropped by 23%, and the number of female apprentices and trainees in training has fallen by 25%, and the number of female commencements has fallen by 40%. The harsh reality facing the Australian people with Australia's shocking economic failure, the additional $315 billion of new spending driving homegrown inflation, is that Australia is building fewer homes and the skills shortage have become far worse. We've lost 1 in 5 apprentices and trainees across the country, and Australians cannot find accommodation, housing or rental properties. Now, Australia needs more apprentices and trainees, not less. Businesses of all sizes, from small and medium family businesses through to major businesses and industries. And Labor promised it would solve the skills shortages. Well, it hasn't done so. Unfortunately, it's just another broken promise made to the Australian people, along with the broken promise to lower power prices, to fix the cost of living issues and lower mortgage costs, amongst so many other broken promises. According to Jobs and Skills Australia, 36% of occupations were assessed as being in shortage in 2023, up from 31% in 2022, and 66 occupations were added to this list in 2023. Effectively, this means over 330 occupations are in shortage in Australia. Clearly, the 1.15 migrants Labor has opened Australia's doors to have not and are not filling these shortages, because Labor has failed to target skilled migrants in its open-door migration policy and has failed to support and train Australian apprentices and trainees in the numbers that are needed. To add insult to injury, the new Minister for Skills and Training role has not only been taken out of Cabinet, clearly it's not a priority for the Labor government.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Pearce.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. As we begin National Skills Week, it is time to celebrate and acknowledge the importance of skills development and vocational education in Australia. This week, we stand at a crossroads where our commitment to education and training meets the growing needs of industries crucial to our nation's future. There is no better example of this commitment than the Fee-Free TAFE programme, a programme designed to support Australians in gaining the skills they need to secure well-paid jobs in industries experiencing critical skill shortages. Since its inception on the 1st of January 2023, Fee-Free TAFE has already provided over 500,000 Australians with the opportunity to pursue education and training without the financial burden of tuition fees. That's 500,000 individuals, many from vulnerable and disadvantaged groups, who are now on the path to a brighter future, whether they're trained to be care workers, tradies or technology specialists. Beyond individual benefits, Fee-Free TAFE is about more than just education. It is a critical component in addressing the growing skills shortage in key sectors that are essential to our national growth and resilience. In particular, the care industry, technology and digital sectors, early childhood education and care and construction are all facing substantial shortages that we must fill if we want to remain competitive on the global stage. The results speak for themselves. In its first year alone, Fee-Free TAFE has supported over 355,000 student enrolments, more than double the initial target of 180,000 places. Enrolments across priority sectors has been especially strong, with over 120,000 in the care sector, over 45,000 in technology and digital, and over 32,000 in early childhood education and construction. These aren't just numbers on a page. They represent real lives being transformed, real gaps being filled, and real progress being made in securing our nation's future workforce. As we launch the future, Fee-Free TAFE is well on track to continue making an impact. Through a historic partnership with states and territories, the Albanese Labor government has committed over $1.5 billion to deliver 500,000 Fee-Free TAFE places between 2023 and 2026. This investment isn't just an expenditure, it's a down payment on a better Australia, one with a skilled workforce ready to meet the challenges of tomorrow. We are proud that Fee-Free TAFE is not just addressing skills shortages, but also targeting priority groups who have historically faced barriers to education and employment. Among those who enrolled are almost 158,000 young people, over 117,000 job seekers, almost 35,000 people with disabilities, and over 30,000 First Nations Australians. These are the individuals who need support the most, and Fee-Free TAFE is providing that support by removing financial barriers and offering them a path to secure, fulfilling careers. But let's be clear, this isn't just about statistics and policies, it's about real savings for everyday Australians. Students training in critical fields like childhood education and civil construction have saved thousands of dollars thanks to Fee-Free TAFE. While we celebrate the success of Fee-Free TAFE, it is important to acknowledge that not everyone shares this vision. In fact, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition has described Fee-Free TAFE as wasteful spending, yet the evidence is clear. Fee-Free TAFE is not only providing Australians with the skills they need to get ahead, but it is also strengthening the workforce in industries that are desperate for qualified workers. What is even more concerning is that the Opposition has offered no alternative plan. At a time when Australia faces critical shortages in key industries, they have refused to support our additional Fee-Free TAFE and VET places. Every Australian deserves a chance to secure a well-paid, stable job with career progression. Every industry vital to our future deserves the workforce it needs to thrive. That is why we have put TAFE at the heart of our vocational education and training sector. We understand that a strong VET sector is key to providing Australians with the training they need to secure a brighter future. By working with the states and territories to deliver fee-free TAFE, we are ensuring that our investment is reaching those who need it the most, and that is having a real impact on addressing the skills shortages that we face. As we begin National Skills Week, let us celebrate the transformative power of education and training. Let us commit to continue to build a strong, resilient and skilled workforce. And let us stand firm in our belief that investing in the skills of our people is the surest way to invest in the future of Australia. Thank you.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Hunter. Is he ready to go? Yeah. I was just sort of waiting for him to jump.
Sorry, I didn't know they were... Now that we're back to where we should be. Thank you, Speaker. One of the most important investments any government can make is in education. When we invest in education, we're investing in the future of our country. Unfortunately, the previous government neglected key parts of our education system, particularly TAFE. The consequences have been clear. When we came into government, we faced nationwide skills shortages. Now, Speaker, I'm not an economist, but I'm a proud TAFE graduate, so I know that when you make it harder and less affordable for people to attend TAFE, you end up with Australian businesses struggling to find skilled workers. You end up with skill shortages, but we are fixing this. Fee-free TAFE is helping Australians study in areas where we need skills the most, like future care workers and tradies. And the evidence shows that this is working. Speaker, fee-free TAFE is on track to boost the supply of skilled workers in critical industries, particularly in care, technology and digital, early childhood education and construction. This policy is a nation-building and life-changing for everyone who is now getting free tertiary level education. But our approach when it comes to getting people trained in the area of their choice is quite different to those opposite. Those opposite who never cared about TAFE, and they never will. That's why the Deputy Leader of the Opposition described fee-free TAFE as wasteful spending. But it's not just one of their opinions on that side. Their disregard for TAFE is deeply ingrained. Speaker, let's not forget that there wasn't a single skills policy in the Opposition's budget reply speech. They have refused to back our additional fee-free TAFE and VET places for construction, our expanded access to new energy apprentices, our expanded capacity for training facilities and trainer workforce, our support for women's careers in VET, or our increased financial support to prioritise apprentices and their employers. Every time we have tried to rebuild TAFE, they have tried to stand in the way. But this hasn't stopped us from getting on with the job. Speaker, we've delivered fee-free TAFE, helping hundreds of thousands of Australians pursue their jobs of their choice. The early data reported by states and territories up to the 30th of June this year tells us that fee-free TAFE has helped create over 500,000 jobs. Enrolments nationally since it commenced on the 1st of January 2023. We had a target of 180,000 places in the first year of fee-free TAFE in 2023. But Speaker, we didn't just deliver on this, we over-delivered. We smashed that target with over 355,000 student enrolments. This shows that when TAFE is affordable and accessible, people will seize on this opportunity. Speaker, enrolments in fee-free TAFE have been strong across all priority sectors. We've had over 120,000 care sector course enrolments. There were over 45,000 technology and digital sector course enrolments. There were nearly 32,000 early childhood education and care sector enrolments, and over 32,000 construction sector course enrolments. Just think about everything that will get done with an extra few 100,000 skilled workers that we have. Speaker, I'm a proud product of TAFE. It taught me the skills that I needed to be able to gain the good, secure employment which has supported me for the whole of my working life. It also taught me the important lessons about life, Speaker, leaving school at 15 to do my trade, I was thrown into the real world very quickly. But this has helped shape the person I am today. School was never for me. I never loved it, and I definitely never thought about going to university. I will be forever grateful that I was able to go to TAFE and learn the skills and live the experiences that I've had. If you're a young person right now and don't think school is quite for you and don't want to go to university, that's okay. TAFE gives you the chance to get qualifications doing something you love. Speaker, whether you want to be a chippy, a leco, a plumber, a boilie, a mechanic, a tiler, a plasterer, a childcare educator, or to have a qualification hospitality, or maybe you want to be a fitter and turner, just like me. We want to make sure that you're able to go to TAFE and get a high quality qualification that opens doors for you into the future. So let's keep pushing to make trades not just a viable option, but a sought after career path. Tradies are cool. Let's make sure we get the next generation on board and keep pushing tradies along. We need them to keep Australia going, and thank you.
There being no further speakers, the debate is adjourned and the resumption of the debate will be made in order of the day for the next sitting, and I call the clerk.
Private members' business, notice number 3, motion relating to Safer Communities Fund, moved by the member for Latrobe.
Call the member for Latrobe.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I move the motion relating to the Safer Communities Fund in the terms in which it appears on the notice paper.
Call the member.
When it comes to our youth, they are the future leaders, and it's something as members of Parliament and all those across Australia want to see our youth do well. And sadly, some, as I mentioned in my maiden speech many years ago, go down the wrong path, leave school, get bored, get involved in crime. And a number of years ago in Victoria, we still do today, had a number of youth gangs getting up to hideous crimes, home invasions, carjacking, stabbings, you name it. I made an inquiry which I was chair of, and the inquiry was called "No One Taught Me How to Be an Australian." It was actually from a young South Sudanese leader, and that's why we used the name. Now, a person who appeared before that inquiry was Les Twentyman OAM. Now, Les, for those who don't know, is an absolute legend when it comes to supporting youth. And Les told me, and I was a former police officer, and Les said, "Jason, if you want to help the youth, the only way is early intervention." And we put a program in place in the Morrison government, and I actually was very proud as the Assistant Minister in Home Affairs to put this program in place. It was called the Safer Communities Fund for High-Risk Youth. Mr Deputy Speaker, I had 3 criteria. Number 1 was to keep young people in school who are about to fall out the education system. And whether it was staying at school and making pizza ovens, or I didn't care what it was, as long as we could get them to stay in school. Secondly, if they left school, to have someone, a group, an organisation, to wrap their hands around them and say, and provide training and education to get a job or to go back to school. And thirdly, for those who have been incarcerated, that rather than walk out into the hands of another gang member, in actual fact walk out to the hands of someone who's going to support them. And this is when I went, and we actually had a delegation went over to America, and we met with gang members, and the gang members who'd spent many years in jail, that was their role. As young people walked out of an area, out of a police station, is to basically say, "You're going down the wrong way, we want to help you and change your life." So we put in place a program which invested $120 million targeting youth between the ages of 12 and 24, high-risk youth, which supported 133 organisations, of which 30% were in actual fact from the Indigenous community. You thought this would be an absolute no-brainer just to roll over when we had the Albanese Labor government. And to my shock horror, the Labor government has completely cancelled this project, this amazing grant scheme. It's left so many people who are social workers with the skills we need to help young people who no longer have a job. It's left the parents who finally had some hope for their kids or their children or the young person, whatever you want to call them. The sad reality is that the parents no longer have that hope. But worst of all, it comes to the young person themselves. And we're talking, Deputy Speaker, thousands upon thousands of young people right across the country who now have lost that hope, going down the wrong path. So there's no surprise when you look at the crime stats in Victoria, things are horribly on the move in the wrong way. And can I say, this program too wasn't a program where the focus was Liberal-held seats. In actual fact, most of the seats, the large majority were Labor-held seats in areas where there's social economic issues and cuts in funding to Swan and Indi, to Rankin, to Parramatta, Macula, and also one in Chisholm, the Eastern Migrant Centre. And I went and visited that centre, and it was so sad to meet the young staff who are about to lose their job. But as they said to me, they'll get another job, but they felt so bad for the young people. So can I call on the Albanese Labor government to reinstate this funding? It's such a disgrace it's been cut. And I must say I've had a number of Labor members approach me and say it's a crying shame this funding has been cut and it must be restored to help young people. Thank you.
Is there a second for the motion? And reserve?
Second.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I'll call a member for Solomon.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. Let's speak frankly. The former Safer Communities Fund for Early Intervention High Risk Youth program became discredited due to the misuse, even some say rorting, of public funds by the previous government, those opposite. But don't take my word for it. The Auditor General found that grants under this program were only, and I quote, partly effective and partly consistent with the Commonwealth grant rules and guidelines, and funding decisions were not appropriately informed by departmental briefings, end quote. The Australian National Audit Office found that the first 5 rounds of the Safer Communities Fund program were only, and I quote, partly effective and partly consistent with the Commonwealth grant rules and guidelines. Funding decisions were not appropriately informed by departmental briefings, and for the majority of decisions, the basis for the decisions was not clearly recorded. End quote. I wonder why. They go on, and I quote, applications were not assessed fully in accordance with the guidelines. 54% of funding decisions did not have a clear basis for the decision recorded. Now, previous Speaker, the member for Latrobe, continues to push a program that he was personally responsible for misusing. The member for Latrobe handpicked projects that scored lower than projects with higher scores that had been assessed on their merit. The member for Latrobe has even conceded to, and I quote, personally intervening in the selection process. Now, our government, the Albanese government, is a government of integrity. We are providing grant programs that meet the needs of local communities, not Liberal candidates. And what is disappointing about the former government's treatment of the Safer Communities Fund program is that there were many incredible organisations doing amazing work to contribute to strengthening community safety. And we are working with those organisations. We respect grant processes and are ensuring that grants programs are transparent and merit-based. Community safety is a priority for our government. We have committed more than $182 million from the Attorney-General's portfolio to improve community safety and security across Australia through community-based crime prevention and justice reinvestment initiatives. Justice reinvestment is a key element to address the causes of crime in my electorate and in the Northern Territory. More than 30 years after the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, First Nations peoples, remain overrepresented at every point in the criminal justice system. The Australian Government is committed to pursue meaningful change by investing in place-based initiatives led and implemented by First Nations communities and organisations to help turn the tide on incarceration and deaths in custody. Across the Northern Territory, we are seeing these initiatives being developed in Maningrida, Groote Eylandt, Katherine and Central Australia. I've met with local organisations in Darwin and Palmerston to drive the process and develop a range of elements to address the causes of crime. Work continues on a youth hub near my electorate office in Darwin that represents one of these components of our response, working in partnership with the NT Government and community organisations, and indeed it was my #1 priority in the previous term to make sure that the funding was there and allocated to address these issues. The Albanese Government is committed to supporting local communities to strengthen community safety and provide alternate pathways for young people who are at risk of being engaged in criminal and antisocial behaviour, to support activities aimed at improving the engagements of at-risk young people in education work-ready programs, decreasing antisocial behaviour or engagement in criminal activity, and increasing positive community and family engagement. Our government recognises the need for national coordination and collaboration on law enforcement matters. The Police Ministers' Council has been re-established, comprising police ministers from every state and territory. It provides a forum of national coordination and collaboration to achieve improved social policy outcomes and ensure the safety and security of Australians. This is a forum focused on achieving real, tangible outcomes to keep the community safe. It was indeed critical in progressing work on the National Firearms Register, which has been a significant improvement in the work to keep our people safe.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Groom.
Thank you very much, Speaker. When I came into the role, one of the first groups that came to see me in my office was the Toowoomba Garden City Mosque. This is a facility that had suffered arson twice, been burnt down twice, and they came to ask, was there any way that the government could provide any help around keeping this facility secure while it was being built? And I guess I had an interest in this, Speaker. During my time in the Middle East, I built a couple of mosques. I understood what their concerns were. And I asked about it, and of course there was this great fund, the Safer Communities Fund, and it addressed exactly the needs of this community, and it was no surprise. This was a simple request. Can we help with CCTV cameras, lighting, secure fencing, the sort of stuff that is quite obvious when you're dealing with community safety? And we were able to secure that funding, I'm very happy to say, for that mosque. It's built today, and all those outcomes from the Safer Communities Fund are there. They're being used. They're making the place safer, doing exactly the job they were supposed to. And of course there was others across our community who benefited as well. Catholic Care had a great program helping particularly Indigenous kids to the west of Toowoomba stay in school. They had this great boxing program, Speaker. I go to a similar one in Oakey. It's great to see, particularly the young men, come there in the afternoon, burn off a bit of energy, get a good feed, go home, have a good night's sleep. They're not out activated at night time after that. They've had their energy. They've had some great social interaction. It's a great program funded under the Safer Communities program. I could speak to the work done for our Yazidi community, helping them settle after the terrific trauma that they've gone through before coming to Australia. Again, funding through this program. But sadly, Speaker, we had this program, we had this great fund, and then the government took it away. And if you listen to the previous Speaker, his comments were that he had concerns about it being misused. If that's the case, then replace it. If that was the case, then keep the intention. It hasn't been done. This was simply thrown away. A $50 million program, Speaker, we've seen $315 billion of additional spending, and a $50 million program couldn't be kept. We saw $500 million spent on The Voice, and a $50 million program couldn't be kept, Speaker. I think this speaks very much to the priorities of this government. This is a program designed at a community level to acknowledge the concerns of safety from community groups. And Speaker, everywhere I go in my electorate, I hear about this. From churches, I was at the Wesleyan Methodist Church up there in Wilsonton Heights. They'd been broken into. Community centres, again down in Wilsonton, the extreme lengths they're having to go to secure their compounds from the frequent break-ins. The school out at Oakey I went to recently, look, they've had the same issues. Once again, it's where food is stored, there's constant break-ins. And the men's shed at Highfields particularly, they've got some great equipment up there, and it's always at risk of being broken into. There's always little Jimmy marks around the side of the door, people trying to get in. These are the people who know that this program's needed. These are the people who this program was designed to help, and it was helping. And Speaker, look, you know, in the past I've been able to reach out to those groups and say, look, here's a way we can help. Here's a way the federal government can help you. But once again, sadly, Speaker, my community needs help. We saw the desecration of the Toowoomba Drayton Cemetery last week. 100 gravestones just knocked over and destroyed by 3 young criminals. They've been let off. They've been let off. I could talk about Queensland's youth crime crisis separately, Speaker, and I have on multiple occasions. But once again, the communities come to me and said, what is there a way that we can help? Is there a way that we could provide better lighting, better security gates, some CCTV cameras? Is there something that we can do? My answer, sadly, is there was. There was a way we could help under the previous coalition government, but that's been taken away because this program does not align with the priorities of this government. Safer communities do not align with the priorities of this government. $315 billion of additional saving and a $50 million grant couldn't be saved. And if their concerns were genuine about the way it was being run, then they would have introduced an alternative that we could have used. Instead, they didn't. So to cry like the last speaker did and make out that there was something about the way that it was being run that was the issue, that is not true. It simply wasn't their priority. I call on the government to bring it back. You've got time. Bring it back. This was a great program. It helped vulnerable community members across the board in my community, as it did in countless others around Australia. It's a good program. We need it. We want it. The government should show its priorities to the Australian people.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Hasluck.
Deputy Speaker, the member for Latrobe's motion usefully reminds us that we do need to recognise and celebrate the work done at the coalface by organisations in our electorates that work with young people. A little over a week ago in Midland, I hosted the inaugural Hasluck Volunteers Awards. It was a celebration of volunteers young and old, and many of the nominees work with young, vulnerable people every day, and they are truly an inspiration. And in my conversations with community leaders, I find there is strong consensus that if we didn't have these excellent services being provided to our young people, then many of them may find themselves on a path towards trouble, rather than the path that they are on, which is a supported one where they are flourishing. But this motion refers to the Safer Communities Fund, which was commenced under the former coalition government in 2016. The member for Latrobe has been here since 2013 and served prior also, and he is fully aware of that program. And perhaps he had some input into the design. He certainly had some direct hands-on involvement in his capacity as then Assistant Minister. There are reports that the member for Latrobe was involved in the maladministration of the Safer Community Grants program, but of course he wasn't the responsible minister. The buck stops with the member for Dixon, who somehow now finds himself the leader of the opposition. But the member for Latrobe was certainly caught up in it all. It was some of the worst press we've seen from a government, for a government. Here's the Sydney Morning Herald from May 6, 2021. Key Minister rejected departmental advice. Assistant Minister Jason Wood handpicked the projects, cut funding to recipients that scored more highly in the Home Affairs Department's analysis. Minister Dutton diverted money from a previous funding round to help 53 handpicked projects. Mr Wood conceded the grants were not recommended by officials. And the article notes that about 80 projects had money shaved off them so that the member for Latrobe could send $3 million to projects not recommended by the department, at least 2 of which were in fact ineligible. In other words, the member ignored his own guidelines for eligibility. We have the National Anti-Corruption Commission in operation. We have a new administration review tribunal without political appointments. We are cleaning up after the Commonwealth Government, after the Coalition forgot the importance of probity for a whole decade. We create safer communities partly with funding grants to meritorious organisations, but we do that using a process that is fair and above board and not a disgraceful rort. And the reason we need to do these things properly is that one of the ways we create safer communities is we lead. We provide a good example. I don't believe in trickle-down economics, but I do believe in trickle-down leadership. If our politicians are rorting the system and undermining fairness and due process, then it will affect every other part of society. And yes, it will trickle down to the youth. The Albanese government has reformed the grants process so that when community groups apply for a grant, they can apply knowing that they have the same chance as any other group and are having the same criteria applied. They will know that they will not have to guess at hidden criteria, like whether the member for Dixon or the member for Latrobe think the application has some political use for their party. And now to the organisations that we celebrate today and recognise with grants at times because of their commitment to youth and their proven results. Clan Midland champions early intervention to improve life opportunities for the young people, providing programs and services designed to support and promote happy and healthy families, which creates stronger families and communities. Alnor Community Language provides a safe and welcoming environment for young people to connect with their community, learning English and many other skills, and particularly learning Arabic. They promote community engagement and encourage young people to reach their full potential. The Ellenbrook Vipers Rugby Club was well actually represented at the Hasluck Volunteers Award Night too, with their 3 club members for being nominated for awards. And this is because their club members are dedicated to going above and beyond for their community. The coaches, club executives have created a supporting and caring community environment for the young people of Ellenbrook. Koya Aboriginal Corporation has worked with young people in Midland and surrounds since 2006 and focuses on engaging, developing and nurturing and supporting Aboriginal and vulnerable children and young people in order that they will grow to thrive and succeed. The Swan City Youth Service provides activities and advice and a safe space support for young people. The Darlington and Kalamunda Scouts also creating marvellous memories for generations. Each and every one of these organisations in Hasluck
Order. The member's time has expired. The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call a member for Casey.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, it's been interesting to listen to those opposite talk about the previous government. I hope those that have spoken today will tomorrow in caucus ask their ministers some questions. They could ask the Minister for Health why of the 10 urgent care clinics that have been announced since the budget, 9 of those 10 have been in ALP seats. They could ask the Minister for Health that if they're very genuine in their words that they've just spoken. They could also ask the Minister for Communications. They could ask the Minister for Communications why the phone tower program that was announced... When you hit a nerve, Deputy Speaker, interjections is what you get. They could ask about phone towers and why the phone tower program that this government announced is now before the Auditor-General, and why in Victoria 100% of funding for phone towers went to ALP seats, despite my community of Casey being the second most disaster-prone community in the country. But they walk out and they don't want to talk about that. They could also ask the Treasurer. They can ask the Treasurer why they cut $50 million from the Safer Communities Fund at the same time that the Treasurer committed $40 million to sell the Stage 3 tax cuts. So we don't have money to keep the community safe, but we find $40 million to sell the Stage 3 tax cuts that have already been implemented. And that is the hypocrisy of those opposite. They're happy to preach to us, but not actually live up to their own standards that they're going to set. And we see that time and time again with the Albanese Labor government. Because my community knows that the Safer Communities Fund was crucial. Tony Smith, my predecessor, did great work in installing CCTV cameras in our community. In 2013, we got cameras in Hillsville. We got them in Lilydale and we got them in Yarra Junction. I've lived in my community my whole life and I've seen the benefit of these cameras. In 2016, there was cameras into Belgrave, into Monbulk, into Mooroolbark, into Mount Evelyn, into Woorolloc and to Yarra Glen. And then in 2019, into East Warburton, Upwey, Wandon North, Seville, Millgrove, Montrose, Warburton West, Warburton East, and then Wandon and Upwey, again more there in Upwey. And they are making a difference in our community. I've been speaking to local law enforcement who are working with me to get some of these cameras upgraded to make sure that our community is safe. There are businesses and chambers of commerce that are working with me. They've had break-ins, they've had issues that have happened in their community, in their stores. There's violence that happens on the streets of some of these towns and they need the CCTV to keep them safe. It gives the police lots of valuable assets, Deputy Speaker. The most important one is deterrence. If criminals know that there are cameras in streets and in communities, they are less likely to commit a crime. And that means people are safer. That means families and loved ones are safer. As the police said to me, it means many young women are safer to walk the streets of our community. But it's also not just deterrence, which is crucial. It allows the police to gather evidence, to prosecute those who have committed crimes. And I recently spoke with our local police officers, and they were sharing stories of how these cameras in our community have allowed them to catch criminals. And not just criminals locally. Many of the cameras are catching cars that are coming from other areas into our community. Major crimes have been foiled. Serious criminals have been arrested because of these cameras. The police want them, the community want them. I'm going to continue to work with the community to make sure we have the most up-to-date technology. But the Albanese Labor government is telling my community and many communities across a country that these cameras don't matter, that keeping community safe doesn't matter, that having early intervention in high-risk youth programs does not matter. And they're showing that through their actions. They're showing that by cutting $50 million out of this fund, while at the same time putting $40 million to sell the stage 3 tax cuts. Because ultimately, governments and budgets are about choices. The choices a government make are all about what they're going to do. They're more focused on politics and on spin than keeping people safe. So I urge this government to reinstate the $50 million, put more into this to keep our communities safe.
The member's time has expired. The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Tangney.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I joined the WA Police Force in 2006. For more than 15 years, I served community from Eucla to Karratha and back to Perth. My last position with WA Police Force was working in the Community Engagement Division. Engaging with the community I serve has always been important to me. I want our community to be safe. I want people in our community to have safe places. As a police officer, engaging with our youth is also vital. When I was a police officer, I saw how initiatives such as Police Community Youth Centre, PCYC, and the Police Rangers program in secondary schools help to form fellowship and positive relationships with young people. This helps to reduce crime. And there are many community programs that make a difference. The Williton Youth Centre in my electorates of Tangney help making young people feel safe, connected, and welcome. The centre provides opportunity for youth to make connection, communicate, and feel value. I saw them learning new skills like music and martial arts. When I engage with anyone in our community, it was vital that I act with the highest integrity. As a police officer, I want members of the community to trust me. Trust is so important as it is a part of the safety. And I'm very proud to be part of Albanese Labor government that act with integrity. The former Safer Community Fund being discredited due to the rotting of public funding by the previous government. The Auditor General found the grants under this program were only partly effective and partly consistent with the Commonwealth grants rules and guidelines. And the funding decision was not appropriately informed by the departmental briefing. This is not acting with integrity. The Albanese Labor government's grants program are based on merits. They are transparent. And they exist to meet the needs for our local communities. Community safety is a priority for the Albanese government. Since October 2022, the government has committed more than $182 million from the Attorney General portfolio to improve community safety and security across Australia through community-based crime prevention and justice reinvestment initiative. For example, the Securing Faith-Based Places grants to improve security at religious schools and preschools, places of worship, and faith-based community centers. Last month, I had the opportunity to visit the Chinese Presbyterian Church in Tangney, one of the recipients of the Securing Faith-Based Places grant. The leader of the church told me how they appreciated the opportunity to improve their safety and security. And it must be said that this grant was awarded through an open, competitive, and merit-based process. As a former police officer, I also believe in the value of working together. In 2023, my colleague, the Attorney General, the Honourable Mark Dreyfus, KC, MP, he re-established the Police Minister Council. The former government have disbanded the Ministerial Council for Police and Emergency Management. The Police Minister Council, bringing together all police ministers from every state and territory, and the Australian Attorney General to coordinate and collaborate on a national level. This forum was critical in progressing work on the National Firearm Register. This led to National Cabinet Landmark Agreement in December 2023 to implement a National Firearm Register. This is the most significant improvement in the Australia Firearm Register management system in almost 30 years. This will help to keep community and our police officers safer. And the movement, the involvement of these all police ministers and police commissioners was critical to achieving this outcome. Integrity and trust, transparency, working together to achieve real outcome. These are the values I held close as a police officer and now your Member of Parliament. I'm proud to share this value with the LBC.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call a member for Cowper.
Well, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and I'm very pleased to rise to speak on the Safer Communities Fund and highlight the fact that Labor has ripped $50 million out of that fund. And for those at home who don't know what the Safer Communities Fund does, on a practical level, it provides safety for your community. Councils, local community groups can apply for funding for practical implications, for practical things that work on the ground, things like security cameras, things like lights. And I'll speak to you thinking about my former occupation as a police officer, as a beat cop, as a detective, as a prosecutor. These things, these small applications in rural and regional areas are so important for police officers to do their jobs. You have cameras on every corner in cities and metropolitan areas, but in the regions, we need this money to keep our communities safe for a deterrence factor, but also for the police and law enforcement agencies to be able to do their job. I'll give you a practical example. Kempsey Council applied for CCTV under this, and they received $300,000. There's a crime spree in southwest Rocks. One of these cameras pick up the car coming out from out of town so they know who the offenders are, out of one camera. I had a meeting at Southwest Rocks recently. Some might consider it a small, sleepy coastal town. There were over 300 people attended that crime forum along with the police. All those people understand how important it is to have this Safer Communities Fund there. They know the application of the funding that has gone into our communities. And the police are on the same level as the communities. We need this. We need this to do our jobs. but it also does keep the community safe. Kids walking home after sport, 5 o'clock in winter, it starts getting dark. It keeps them safe. There's lights there. The cameras are there. It's deterrence for those who are thinking of committing offences. And we have seen a drop in the rates of graffiti and malicious damage and destruction of community property because of this investment into our communities. And the Coalition recognise that. But now 50 million is being pulled away because it's considered waste, because it was considered not properly implemented. Well, $450 million on a referendum. Imagine what they could have done with that instead of dividing the country on a failed referendum. So we should be here. We should be here supporting our regional communities, putting back that $50 million. You've just implemented a whole heap of new public servant jobs. In fact, it's the largest growing employment area in Australia. Why don't we look after our people in the regions? Why do the people in the regions always have to suffer? Another example is Coffs Harbour. Coffs Harbour received $900,000 to put up desperately needed lighting around and in the Coffs Harbour area. It has worked incredibly well. If we didn't have that, the already increasing crime on the ground, one can only imagine how much more the police resources would be stretched. So I say to the Albanese government, and I say to the Prime Minister, come outside and have a look at our regions. Talk to the people on the ground. Talk to the people who have implemented the programs for youth through this Safer Community Funds. Ones like in Bellingen and in Kempsey, where it actually makes a difference on the ground because it is led by people on the ground, not by bureaucrats in the bubble in Canberra, and that's where the problem lies. Mr Albanese, come and visit us in the regions and I'll show you how it works.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call a member for Moreton.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I'm pleased to speak about this motion dealing with empowering youth and reducing crime, a motion straight out of the Liberal Party playbook. Prey on people's fears and try to scare and divide people into voting for them. They are boring and predictable, the original one-trick pony. No regard for facts, no regard for community. It is as sickening as it is repetitive. Perhaps the member for Latrobe who brought the motion forgot it was his party that rorted the Safer Communities Fund under the supervision of the now Leader of the Opposition. Almost half of the total funding under this program was diverted from recommended merit-based projects to projects in target coalition seats to buy votes. The Auditor-General found that funding decisions were not appropriately informed by departmental briefings." End quote. And now the member for Latrobe wants to be taken seriously on a motion about community safety. Give me a break. I heard no cries from the member for Latrobe when his leader and the rest of the Liberal Party tarnished the reputation of the Safer Communities Fund and sacrificed community safety for short-term political gain. The member for Latrobe has admitted that he personally intervened in the selection process to prioritise projects in Liberal target seats over communities that actually needed the funding. These are the people that we're supposed to believe care deeply about safety in our nation. Unlike those opposite, the Albanese Labor government acts with integrity and takes our responsibility to community safety seriously. Since October 22, we've provided $182 million to improve community safety through community-based preventative and justice reinvestment initiatives. Importantly, all this funding has gone to communities that really needed funding because, in stark contrast to those opposite, our government runs transparent and fair grants processes. We serve the Australian people and make positive differences in communities right across the country, while those opposite serve themselves only. Last year, the government implemented faith-based places grants to ensure that Australians can continue to safely practice their religions. This $50 million investment provides funding for security guards and upgrades to faith facilities and helps to protect Australians of faith from religious intolerance. In June of this year, the Attorney-General announced funding of $13.57 million for state and territory police citizens, youth clubs and blue light organisations. This program focuses on young people at risk of becoming involved with criminal and antisocial behaviour. It is cheaper to divert than to incarcerate. Remember, it costs around $900,000 or $1 million per year to keep one young person in custody. Diversionary activities improve young people's engagement with education, work-ready programs and foster family and community connections. And from someone whose partner has worked in this area for 30 plus years, I can tell you that engagement with education is the key for people that might get into trouble. It helps reduce recidivism rates and is yet another example of this government's fair income commitment to community safety. It also highlights the approach of early intervention and supporting young people so that they do not take those wrong turns. Those opposite won't now acknowledge the value of these initiatives because we know that they are not serious about community safety. This motion is all about scaring the Australian community and taking them for mugs. Now, those opposite love mugs. They've still got plenty of those black mugs. But if they really cared about community safety, maybe they wouldn't have disbanded the Ministerial Council for Police and Emergency Management, the Commonwealth's foremost body to engage with the states and territories on keeping Australians safe in their homes. We've reinstated this body, which has already proved its worth supporting work on the implementation of a national firearms register. Practical help. If the member for Latrobe was serious about community safety, you'd think he might have raised his concerns about national knife law reforms with his own party before bringing his sound and fury motion to this parliament. The measures in this motion were promised by the Liberal Party back in 2010. Now, I'll give the member for Latrobe the benefit of the doubt and assume he genuinely did not find the time to raise this issue with his colleagues during his 9 years in government. Or we could recognise this motion for what it is, a reflection of the shameful record of those opposite prepared to exploit fear for their shameful political gain, short-term political gain, rather than doing the right thing by the community. Another shallow and cynical political attempt to scare Australians in spite of the Albanese Labor government's actions that are all about promoting community safety and harmony.
The time allotted for this debate has expired. The debate is adjourned and the resumption of the debate will be made an order of the day for the next sitting. And I call the clerk.
Private members' business, notice number 4, a motion relating to the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme.
And I call the member for Higgins.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move the motion relating to the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme in the terms in which it appears on the notice paper. Deputy Speaker, cheaper medicines have been a win for patients. They've been a win for their hip pockets, their health and for the wider health system. When meds are cheaper, people are more likely to fill out their scripts, they're more likely to take their medication. In other words, compliance improves dramatically, and there's evidence to back that up. And when they take their meds and compliance improves, it's a virtuous cycle that spins up. Avoidable presentations to the emergency department do not occur. And I've seen this time and time again, numerous patients who were admitted to hospital because they simply had run out of money to take their medications. In 2020 to 2021, just to give you an idea of the scale of this issue, 314 million prescriptions were provided to 17 million Australians. We know now that almost 1 million Australians take 5 or more meds a year. Now, that's polypharmacy. It's not necessarily a good thing, but it is the reality we live in. So for many Australians, taking their medication is a really significant hit to their hip pocket, which is why we have, since the day we took office, focused on making medicines cheaper for Australians, and in doing so, improving compliance and reducing the number of presentations to the emergency department. In July of the year we formed government, in 2022, we lowered the PBS safety net threshold. In October that year, we reduced the price of 2,000 brands of medicines. In January of last year, we delivered the largest price reduction in the 75-year history of the PBS. The PBS, or the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme, is Australia's national formulary, a list or a directory of all the medications we have to provide to the Australian people, all of which have been robustly and rigorously tested and come in at a price point that is not going to bankrupt the country. This PBS is actually a legacy of the Chifley government. He had to actually take it to a referendum in order to get it done. But the PBS now is a gift to our nation, and what it does is that it has allowed more and more Australians to receive cheaper meds. Now, when the Liberals left office, meds were, after 10 years I might add, meds were, a general script was $42.50. They could have, in that interval, actually reduced the price of medications for Australians. Instead, they didn't. We came in and we brought that down by $12.50. So now a general script is no more than $31.60 for medicines on the PBS. But if you're a pensioner or a concession card holder, you'll be paying no more than $7.70. We froze those prices in the last budget, in the May budget, such that for general patients, that price of $31.60 per script will last till the end of next year. And for concession patients, it'll go on for another 5 years. So frozen those costs. But not only that, we also introduced, after some resistance from the pharmacy sector, 60-day scripts. And 60-day scripts are really important for patients, those 1 million Australians who are taking 5 or more medications. In other words, patients with chronic diseases who are going to be taking these drugs for a lifetime. And we introduced this September last year for 100 medications. A second tranche came in March of this year for another 100 meds. September this year, it'll be another 300 medications. And I just want to go through what that actually means for some patients. Now, on the topic of diseases, we often think of diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, but in fact, there are a host of rare diseases. There are around 7,000 rare diseases that collectively affect 2 million Australians, both adults and children. And one of those diseases is amyloidosis. Amyloidosis is a very rare disease. It affects less than 2,000 Australians per year. And I have, in my 26-year career, when I was practicing, I've only ever diagnosed it once in a patient who presented late, and that is the norm. We have made on Patro a medication for a hereditary type of amyloidosis now available to Australian patients. And this is a game-changer drug. It can actually slow the disease down, preventing the development of further neuropathy or cardiomyopathy, which can then lead to heart failure. It has improved the lives of Australians. It is a rare disease. It affects about 55 patients per year, but those patients would otherwise be paying close to $650,000 per year for this drug. They will now be getting it for $31.60 per script. Infusions, which they take every 3 weeks, an absolute lifesaver. That is what cheaper meds means for the Australian people.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Is there a seconder for the motion? Can someone second the motion?
I second the motion.
Yeah. And reserve your right to speak?
Yes, reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Member for Wills. The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Kooyong.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I thank the member for Higgins for drawing attention to this very important issue. We are very lucky in this country to have a national medicines policy which should really guarantee all Australians equitable, timely, safe and affordable access to a high-quality, reliable supply of medicines and medicine-related services. Unfortunately, though, the medication system in this country is too complicated, it's too slow and is insufficiently responsive to the needs of Australians. I'd also note that for many Australians, medications are still too expensive. Drugs are approved in Australia having been assessed by the Therapeutic Goods Administration and the Pharmaceutical Benefits Advisory Committee, who together determine their comparative health gain. This assessment includes looking at the magnitude and significance of drugs' effects, their safety, their cost-effectiveness and their affordability in the absence of PBS subsidies, their predicted use in practice if they are licensed, and the financial implications of that use. The process then involves commercial negotiations between the government and the drug suppliers. But it's clear that the TGA and the PBS are not working as well as we need them to. We have chronic shortages of hundreds of medications in this country, including some antibiotics, diabetes medications and HRT. Just this week, operations are being cancelled around the country because of a shortage of intravenous saline. In a country surrounded by salt water, we have a shortage of saline. I'm also hearing from palliative care physicians who are frustrated by ongoing shortages of morphine. which are impeding their care of dying patients. This is a system which is not working as well as we need it to or as well as it should. Now, it is good that this government has passed legislation which has lowered the safety net for medication prices for many Australians. It has also passed legislation which has enabled 60-day prescriptions of medications and up to a 12-month prescription after a single visit to the GP. That and the limited price increases that we've legislated in this term of Parliament are really important measures for the many Australians who are dealing with severe cost of living pressures at this point in time. But we also have the fact that we need new medications, and it still takes years to get a new medication from initial application to approval in this country. We know that the PBS operates within a finite budget and that the inclusion of new, often expensive medications is a perennial strain on its resources. While we all appreciate that the government has to ensure value for money and in improving and licensing new medications, its systems are often a frustrating barrier to the access to new and innovative therapies. Equity of access is a concern, especially for those with rare diseases which often mandate high-cost, low-volume therapies. As a doctor and a medical researcher, I experienced for many years the frustrations of this system, and I felt them along with my patients and their families. Deputy Speaker, in November 2021, the Parliamentary Health Committee inquiry documented the need for urgent improvement of health technology environment in Australia. It described how we need greater transparency around medicine approvals and funding, clarity around how we define cost effectiveness, and a commitment to consideration of and engagement with alternative models for funding of the system.
A division has been called for in the House. The proceedings are suspended to enable honourable members to attend the division. The proceedings will resume when the Chair of the Federation Chamber is resumed at the conclusion of the division or subsequent divisions.
All right, the question is that motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Kooyong.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The review into the health technology assessments in this country has now been gathering dust on the Minister's desk for some months, and I don't have any confidence that its recommendations are going to be enacted in this term of government. It's extremely disappointing and frustrating for all in the sector because we need this government to tell us how it plans to develop specific funding mechanisms and policies supporting the expedited approval of high-cost, low-volume treatments for medical conditions. Clinicians and researchers deserve an improved framework for ongoing health technology assessments, and these should include a commitment to research and development and to greater innovation and adaptability within our regulatory bodies. The PBS should provide affordable access to essential medicines for all Australians, but its processes are fraught with challenges. Regulatory delays, cost-effectiveness assessments, budget constraints and negotiation complexities all contribute to the difficulties faced by pharmaceutical companies, healthcare providers and patients. We have to address these challenges through streamlined processes, enhanced transparency and flexible approaches to cost effectiveness. The government needs to ensure that our PBS can evolve. It can continue to evolve to meet the evolving needs of all Australians. And we need the government to act now, to demonstrate vision, decisiveness and effectiveness. Australians deserve no less.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the member for Corangamite.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Cheaper medicines means more money in the pockets of Australians and better health outcomes, particularly for people with chronic conditions. The Albanese government recognises this, and since coming to government, we have significantly increased the co-payment for medicines on the Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme. Deputy Speaker, affordable healthcare is in Labor's DNA because we understand that good health is pivotal to people doing well and living a full life. The PBS scheme was established by the Chifley government. The Coalition opposed it, just like they opposed Medibank and Medicare. The Albanese government is building on the great legacy of the Chifley government. Since coming to government, we have approved extra funding for 227 new and amended listings on the PBS. In my electorate of Corangamite, cheaper medicines are playing a crucial role in easing cost of living pressures for individuals and families. As of June 30 this year, the total patient savings in my region was nearly $2.5 million, and the number of reduced cheaper scripts was just under 200,000. And when medicines are more affordable, people can manage their health without sacrificing other essential needs, such as food, housing and education. And this balance is especially important for those with chronic conditions who require regular medication. One of the many life-changing and life-saving drugs is Kosovo. Deputy Speaker, selumetinib, also known as Kosovo, will be included under the PBS for the first time to treat symptomatic, inoperable, benign nerve tumours in children 2 years old and over with neurofibromatosis type 1. NF1 is a rare genetic disorder affecting about 1 in 3,000 Australians. Individuals with NF1 commonly have tumours that cause symptoms such as headaches, pain and disfigurement, and lead to other complications, significantly impacting quality of life. Kosovo works by blocking certain proteins involved in the growth of tumour cells. This medicine is invaluable to the 170 children who are expected to access it each year. It significantly improves quality of life. And without the subsidy, families may well pay around $146,000 per year for treatment. This is well beyond the reach of most families. On the PBS, they will pay no more than $31.60 per prescription or $7.70 if they have a concession card. It's worth pointing out that under the Albanese government, the maximum cost of a prescription on the PBS was lowered from $42.50 to $30 in January. From $42.50, the largest cut to the co-payment in the 75-year history of the PBS. This has delivered about $20 million each month back into the pockets of Australians. And since the Albanese government introduced 60-day prescriptions, more than 600,000 scripts have been brought into place, saving patients an estimated $5 million. It should be noted that the Coalition tried unsuccessfully to block this legislation, which was just a nonsensical move when it has benefited so many Australians. All in all, Deputy Speaker, by year's end, Australians will have saved more than $250 million on the price of their medicines, with even greater savings to follow later this year. It is easier now to see a doctor for free, with more bulk billing services available since the Albanese government tripled the incentives that doctors get to bulk bill pensioners, concession card holders and children under 16. Doctors in GP clinics in every state and territory have increased the availability of bulk billing since the $3.5 billion investment came into effect on November the 1st. More than 7 million pensioners and concession card holders, as well as 5 million families with children under 16, are eligible for the higher Medicare payments. Together, these patients account for 3 out of 5 visits to the GP. Thanks to the Albanese government, a GP in the major cities will now receive 34% more in Medicare payments to bulk bill a standard 20-minute consultation with an eligible patient. Deputy Speaker, these measures are delivering vital costs of living, ensuring Australians do well. Thank you.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. I give the call to the member for Riverina.
Yet another motion brought in by another Labor member, pretending as though everything good that is in the nation happened since May 2022. And, and if you spruik something often enough and loud enough, eventually I reckon they're going to start to believe their own talking points. I reckon they're going to start to believe that everything prior to May 2022 was bad and that they are responsible for the sun coming up every morning. The problem with this motion is that this is the government which almost sent our pharmacists broke
which almost sent our country chemists in particular to the wall. And we all remember, I know the member for New England, I know the member for Flynn will remember when our white-coated warriors were in the public galleries and they were outraged because the pharmacy agreement had not been signed. And it took those members and it took the Nationals, indeed in a coalition opposition, to bring the government to heel, to bring the government to account, to actually get an accord signed, to get a better deal for our country chemists, hundreds of whom are the only frontline people in those rural communities, in those regional communities, and particularly in those remote areas of Australia, who, but for the chemist, would not have a frontline professional looking after their health needs. And, you know, we hear those opposite talking about bulk billing so often, yet bulk billing rates have dropped 10% under this government, under this Labor government. And I will remember during COVID, and the former member for Flinders as the Health Minister, what he did to make sure that vaccinations went into the Pacific. And I speak on my shadow portfolio role here, but indeed, during that time, over 94 million telehealth consultations through Medicare to 16 million patients, 857 new medicines listings on the Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme since 2019. And that is delivery. That is action. That was a coalition government. So don't come in here, Labor, and pretend as though all is new and you're the only ones who are doing anything about medicine. In fact, if the truth were the case, if your talking points reflected the reality, it's quite the opposite, because Labor are failing on the medical front. Labor are failing when it comes to rural communities and their health needs. And, you know, you only have to look at their 60-day dispensing changes which were very much going to send a lot of country chemists to the wall. And it was the Pharmacy Guild and the National Party in coalition who belled the cat on this very ill-thought-out policy. And we all want cheaper medicines. Yes, indeed we do. But if it comes at the cost of the only health professional in town, the good old country chemist, that friendly health professional who provides the only form of upfront health care for many of those rural communities, then that policy would have sent many rural communities' chemists bankrupt. And we look at what we did during the pandemic. We were ranked, according to the Johns Hopkins Centre, second in the world for pandemic preparedness. And much of that was health. And all of that was because of the policies of the former coalition government. A coalition government now maligned by those opposite. We always hear they're talking about, you know, $1 trillion worth of Liberal Party debt. Well, I'll just remind those opposite, the Liberals are in a coalition with the Nationals. But what did we get? What did we get for the money we spent? We saved tens of thousands of people's lives. We saved millions of jobs. We saved, and indeed during the pandemic, 1.1 million jobs were created. And but for that assistance that we provided, those jobs would have been lost. We would have seen unemployment queues. We would have seen people at the Salvos and the St Vinny's longer than we saw during the Great Depression era. So when Labor comes in with these motions, talking about the PBS, talking about what they've done, they forget about what was done during those years that we were in government. They forget about the life-saving drugs that were put on, the PBS, for cystic fibrosis, for cancers, for leukemia, for so many other people, right particularly throughout our regional communities, who have to drive further, who have to go so, you know, often is the case, it's when in pain catch the plane, and those opposite forget those regional people. They do, and they should reflect on that, and they should make sure that we have better regional health outcomes.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the member for Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I am very fond of the member for Riverina, and I think he does, under the circumstances, in a non-partisan sense, an exceptional job of representing his constituents by and large. I never cease to be frustrated, though, when honourable members come into the chamber clearly paying very little attention to the substance of the motion at hand and seek to score some cheap and poorly articulated political points at the expense of the substance of the matter that we're seeking to discuss. The reality here is that Scott Morrison and his Liberal Party, his Liberal government, left our country and in fact set the conditions for our country to face an unprecedented cost of living crisis. And that is best exemplified, as the member for Riverina very honestly points out, by the $1 trillion of Liberal debt, that Scott Morrison's government stacked up on behalf of the Australian taxpayers and ultimately have left for generations of Australians, regardless of where they live or their socioeconomic circumstances, to pay down. They spent 9 years, 9 budgets, nearly a decade in government, and across the course of that decade, they did not deliver a single budget surplus. In fact, 9 budgets, and despite the mugs crowing about their economic prowess, they did not manage to deliver a single surplus. 9 budget deficits. 9 times they spent more money than they saved. And so the country is left with $1 trillion of Liberal debt. We face a series of very unstable international economic conditions, and the Australian people have been suffering. And people in my own electorate, in Hawke, have been facing very challenging household economic conditions. And so our government, the Albanese Labor government, we can't fix everything. I mean, we don't pretend for a second that there's a silver bullet solution to these challenges that will ultimately set aside this history of reckless fiscal management by the Liberal Party, as well as some very challenging economic conditions. But there are some things that we can do that serve working people in terms of taking some of the economic pressure off them at a household level, and at the same time meeting our broader social obligations and indeed ambitions as a community. Our cheaper medicines policy is a great example of this. This is a policy that is specifically designed to ensure that working people can affordably access the healthcare that they require. It takes economic pressure off the household. Of course, they now get effectively twice as much medicine for their money, so the price of medication is halved. And indeed, it takes pressure off our broader public health infrastructure in that it ensures that people have ongoing health support, that they can afford to pay for their medicines, and accordingly don't find their health conditions slipping over time while they try to save money, while they try to make very difficult considerations about the priorities in their household budget and their family budgets. Their healthcare goes on the back burner, and all of a sudden we have an epidemic of very serious health issues that have been poorly managed for frankly, unreasonable economic reasons. And so this policy is specifically designed, as I said, to do 2 things: to take pressure off working people and their household budgets, and at the same time ensure that we have a healthy community that is able to access the medicines and the healthcare that it requires in order to remain a healthy community. Now, it doesn't matter where you live in this country, and it doesn't really matter the socioeconomic circumstances you come from. This has been an unusual cost of living crunch in this regard. So I well understand that the member for Riverina considers himself, and I think with some credibility, a warrior for regional people. But he is not the only regional MP in this building, and indeed, I assure you that the Nationals are not the only party that represent regional people. I represent regional people as well, and I can tell you right now that regional people all across my electorate have been overwhelmingly positive in terms of this policy. Across our pharmacies in all our small towns, people can now access the healthcare that they need, and they're doing it at half the price that they were previously. We know that our regional health infrastructure is under pressure, and this is one such approach to taking that pressure off.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. I give the call to the member for Pearce.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Today I rise to talk to you about a promise the Albanese Labor government made to the Australian people, a promise to make medicines cheaper, and how we're delivering on that commitment. Labour went to the election pledging to bring down the cost of medicines for Australians. I'm proud to say that we are fulfilling that promise. As of June 30, 2024, over 5 million Australians have saved more than $456 million on their prescriptions since January 2023. This isn't just policy on paper. It's real, tangible relief for households facing rising living costs. This is a kind of support that only Labour government can deliver. Since July 2022, the Albanese Labour government has implemented crucial reforms to make medicines more affordable for everyone. In July 2022, we lowered the PBS safety net threshold. This means people with high medical needs reach the point of getting free or significantly reduced cost medicines faster than before. In October 2022, we reduced the price of 2,000 brands of medicine, and just 3 months later, in January 2023, we achieved the largest price reduction in the 75-year history of the Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme. Under our government, no one pays more than $31.60 for a PBS-listed medicine, while pensioners and concession holders pay no more than $7.70. We know that every dollar counts for Australian families, and this is making a real difference. In September 2023, we introduced 60-day prescriptions for 100 medicines, which was expanded to 184 medicines by March 2024. This reform allows Australians with stable ongoing health conditions to collect 2 months' worth of medicines with a single prescription. This saves them time, cuts down on trips to the pharmacy, and importantly, saves money. To give you an idea, the impact from September 2023 to June 2024 in Pierce alone, there have been over 52,000 60-day scripts filled, easing the burden on thousands of patients. And we are not stopping. In September 2024, we will roll out the third phase of the 60-day prescription reform, which will expand to include nearly 300 medicines. Additionally, in our most recent budget, we froze the price of PBS medicines at $31.60 for general patients until the end of 2025 and $7.70 for concession patients until the end of 2029. This is another way we're delivering essential cost of living relief while ensuring all Australians have access to the medicines they need to stay healthy. I also want to touch on another key part of Labour's commitment to affordable health care. The PBS is a vital lifeline for millions of Australians, and Labour is committed to making it stronger. Since coming to government, we've approved funding for 227 new and amended listings on the PBS. These listings include life-saving and life-changing medicines like Trikafta. Trikafta is a revolutionary drug for people with cystic fibrosis, and we have expanded its PBS listing, making it available to children aged 2 to 5. Cystic fibrosis is a devastating disease, and providing access to Trikafta early in life can make all the difference. This expansion is expected to benefit an additional 330 children each year. Without subsidy, this drug would cost families over $250,000 per year. But on the PBS, they will pay no more than $31.60 or just $7.70 if they hold a concession card. This is the kind of meaningful impact an Albanese Labour government is delivering. Now, it's important to reflect on the opposition's approach. The opposition has consistently opposed every measure we've introduced to make medicines cheaper, and they have a track record of making healthcare more expensive. By the time those opposite left office, the cost of a PBS script had risen to $42.50. But we reversed that trend. We cut the maximum cost of a PBS script from $42.50 down to $30. This is the largest reduction in the cost of medicines in the 75-year history of the PBS. In Pierce alone, from January 2023 to June 2024, there have been almost 207,000 reduced co-payment scripts filled, saving patients nearly $2.5 million. And these savings matter. They mean less financial strain for families and better access to the care that they need. Our goal is simple: to make sure every Australian can afford the medicines that they need without worrying about the cost. These reforms aren't just numbers, they're about people. People who need access to affordable health care and life-saving medication. Thank you.
The time allotted for this debate has expired and the debate is adjourned, and the resumption of the debate will be made an order of the day for the next sitting. I call the clerk.
Private members' business, notice number 5, a motion relating to the Great Artesian Basin.
The member for Flynn.
Deputy Speaker, I move a motion relating to the Great Artesian Basin in terms of which it appears on the notice paper. You give me a second. Seconded?
Second the motion.
Deputy Speaker, I move this motion on behalf of agriculture, on behalf of the farmers and graziers and the rural communities throughout Australia that rely on the Great Artesian Basin as their primary and principal water source. The Great Artesian Basin is unique. There is only one of them on the planet. It is the world's largest underground potable water source. It covers an area of something like 1.7 million square kilometres over 3 states and 1 territory in Australia. It is estimated to carry 65,000 cubic kilometres of water. And it is the 8th wonder of the world, if you like. Now, as we all know, there was a proposal by Glencore through their subsidiary company CTS & Co to pump 330,000 tonnes of hypercritical CO2 fluid into the Precipice sandstone water aquifer of the Great Artesian Basin. Now, this was a trial at Mooney in central Queensland, and if it was given approval, they intended to take that to industrial scale and, according to their EIS statement, pump 730 million tonnes of hypercritical fluid into that Precipice sandstone water aquifer. Now, the Precipice sandstone water aquifer is the deepest and the best water aquifer of the Great Artesian Basin. When this proposal was examined by the Queensland Environment Office, they found that what would happen is that the pH value of the water would be lowered and the water would become acid. As such, it ran the possibility of eroding the geological formations down there and releasing heavy metals such as lead and arsenic into the water. It also found that the Precipice sandstone was not a confined aquifer. And in fact, if you live in central Queensland, where I come from, all the way along the central Queensland escarpment is the Precipice sandstone. That geological feature, those enormous, great big white cliffs, that's where they come out of the ground, and that is where the Precipice sandstone springs are, and everything that all that water in the springs, that's where it originates from, is deep underground. The further south you go, obviously, the deeper it gets. Now, as I've said, the Queensland Government, in their wisdom, and kudos to them, they moved some legislation to effectively ban carbon capture storage in Queensland. Now, one of the problems that we've got is that this issue is not finished, because what we need to do is make New South Wales, South Australia and the Northern Territory follow suit. Because, as I said, the Great Artesian Basin covers all of those states and territories, and it's really important that we recognise the waters of the Great Artesian Basin as what they are, a geological feature that is extremely important to agriculture. Now, there was a Senate inquiry into the whole issue, and they made 2 recommendations, and they are: the committee recommends that states and territories consider a legislated ban on CCS activities across the Great Artesian Basin to ensure this important natural asset is uniformly preserved. And 2, the committee recommends updating the water trigger in the EPBC Act to include onshore carbon capture storage. Now, this is what we're asking the Minister to do, the Minister for the Environment. And as you know, late last year, the National Party moved amendments in the lower house to enable the water trigger through the EPBC Act to put some protections around the waters of the Great Artesian Basin in respect to carbon capture storage. These amendments were defeated both by the government and by the Greens, and it is absolutely outrageous. It is staggering hypocrisy from the government and the Greens not to support those amendments. And as I've said, the Great Artesian Basin
the world's largest underground potable water source. It deserves to be protected at all costs for future generations, for agriculture, and in Australia we are the driest habitable continent. It is absolutely outrageous that somebody would even suggest that we use it as a suppository for industrial waste. So with that, Deputy Speaker, I'll leave it there. I hope that the Minister is listening, and I hope that she follows through.
Is the motion seconded?
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Well, as you know, carbon...
Is the motion seconded? And then I move the motion. And you reserve your right to speak. Yeah. Thank you very much. The question is the motion be agreed to, and I give the call to the member for Blair.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Albanese Government welcomes the member for Flynn's moving this motion. I've got to say it's wonderful to see his newfound interest in the environment and Indigenous cultural values. We certainly agree the issue of carbon capture and storage is important, and protection of the Great Artesian Basin is very important also. But this motion just highlights the coalition's been all over the shop on this Glencore proposed carbon transport storage corporation project. They're hopelessly divided rabble on this issue. The Liberals have been against the Nationals against each other, and they're against each other individually and personally. The reality is the member for Flynn is calling on the government to do something that's premature, because there's no matter before the government to oppose or approve. If there's anyone who should be taking this issue up, he should be taking it up with the Deputy Leader of the Opposition. And that's because we know during the former Morrison government, she was the Environment Minister when a delegate in her department decided the issue was not a controlled action, that is, it would not require approval under the Environment Protection Biodiversity Conservation Act, leaving environmental assessments to the Queensland Government. I might add the Miles Labor government recently announced a ban on carbon capture and storage in the Queensland section of the Great Artesian Basin. I noticed the member for Flynn thanked them for it. I would have thought that he would have put it in the motion because it was a decision that was made a while ago. So it just seems this motion is largely redundant, and little more than virtue signalling. Back to the Morrison government. Now, before finalising its advice, the Environment Department sought feedback from several ministers at the time, including the then National Party leader and Minister for Regional Development, the member for New England, the Nationals member and then Minister for Resources and Water, the member for Hinkler. The Nationals leader's office didn't respond, while then Minister for Resources and Water's office actually endorsed the department's decision. In a recent statement, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition referred to this consultation, pointing out to her national comrades that they were fully aware of the decision at the time. She said no objections were raised, and in one case, a minister's agency wrote back in agreement. In a complete about-face and a sign of disunity, the current leader of the National Party, the member for Maranoa, and his party room had been publicly bagging the Deputy Leader of the Opposition over this. In May, the Nationals leader said the decision was wrong and said this: it was a desktop review done by the Environment Minister at the time, Susan Lee, and she didn't get it right. It wasn't on her radar to the extent it should have been. The trouble is, before the election, the Nationals were all for the project, and after the elections, they were as well. In June 22, an interview on the ABC's Insiders program, the leader of the Nationals, whose electorate finds this project in, said this: look, about 60 kilometres west of where I'm sitting now, and carbon capture storage is being implemented on a coal-fired power station from Merrin. That's the investment the Morrison government made. He even posted on his Facebook page the following statement: proud to be investing $5 million in carbon transport and storage company at Merrin, contrary to the motion here before today. Now, the Nationals want to pretend they have nothing to do with the project and are trying to walk both sides of the street on this. Last year, the Minister for the Environment took our first tranche of nature repair environment legislation before the House, and the Nationals moved an 11th hour amendment, basically having a bet each way on carbon capture and storage in the Artesian Basin. But what do you think? They gave the government a chance to even look at it? Absolutely not. It was never going to pass. So just what is the Liberal Party and the National Party's position on this? You just have to have a look at the Leader of the Nationals' insider interview just over 2 years ago, when he was spruiking the project because it, and I quote, not only protects gas, but also protect our coal industry as well as carbon capture and storage, contrary to the motion here today. So that's the position of the Leader of the National Party 2 years ago, and on a number of projects, and before the election and after the election. And here we have the member for Flynn putting a motion that's completely at odds with the Deputy Leader of the Opposition and his own leader before the chamber today. This is nothing more than the Liberal and National Party duking it out in the Federation chamber. I'll be surprised if the Liberal Party hasn't got someone in to back the member for Farrer, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, against this. What a circus the coalition is on this. A complete fiasco. I welcome, can I say, the member for Flynn. And comrade, if you want to come over here and support us and be on this side of the chamber, I'll issue with the Labor Party membership ticket, can I say? But don't stay over there because they're full of disunity. You can't work out what you want. You're fighting amongst yourselves, fighting internally in the National Party. And just have a yarn, by the way, to the Leader of the Nationals and see what his true position is.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the member for New England.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd just like to wish the member for Blair all the very best in the forthcoming pre-selections where his own party is going to give him the boot because apparently he's not of the right gender, which is a shame. So look, if we just go through the side of it, if you just look at the actual chemical makeup, you've got carbon dioxide, you've got H2O, and so CO2 and H2O is going to give you carbonic acid, which of course is H2CO3. Now, what happens with that is we get the acidification of water, and at a pH of about 3.75 at 25 degrees Celsius, we have the capacity for the leaching of materials, especially as my good colleague has said, things such as arsenic and lead coming into the water. We might also note, and this is why we have a concern, that once the pH of water gets below around about 6.5, cattle are less likely to start to drink it. In fact, they get a condition called acidosis. And acidosis means their capacity for the conversion of feed is dramatically reduced. So what we see in the western areas is the Great Artesian Basin underwrites and underlies the country, but it underwrites the economy and also underwrites the capacity for towns to exist out there. And when I was living out in Western Queensland, in Charleville and St George, running out of hot water was never a problem, running out of cold water was, because the water temperature is between 30 to 100 degrees Celsius. Now, what we've also noted here is this goes right back to the Pliocene era. We are looking at a time, some of this water that comes up, it's between thousands of years old to 2 million years ago is when it was actually absorbed by the Great Artesian Basin. That is a completely different epoch. It's from an epoch that is way before the land bridges. It's an epoch from when Australia was a lot wetter. So we're borrowing from a time millions of years ago, and for a tiny little fraction of a political view and a policy view, a tiny little fraction of that 2 million years, we're willing to put it all at risk. We haven't got another 2 million years to fill up the Great Artesian Basin. The Great Artesian Basin, Madam Deputy Speaker, is about 3,000 metres at its deepest. It's over 9,000 feet. It's vastly deeper than what Mount Kosciuszko is high. So this is the biggest aquifer in the world. And I find it so peculiar that we're willing to put it at risk. And we find that in certain things that, swindle factories, wind towers everywhere, that's okay. Knock over whatever you want. Photovoltaic, painting your fields photovoltaic black, that's okay. You can do that. 28,000 kilometres of strip clearing for transmission lines, that's okay. Tearing up environmental laws to put all this in place, that's okay. Changing the pH of the Great Artesian Basin, that's okay. But if you graze country in certain areas, that's a criminal offence. If you take down timber in certain areas, you need a logging permit or it's a criminal offence. And this goes to show you the perversion and the confusion that's happened by reason of this cult-like activity which surrounds climate policy, and it is a cult. It is a cult. It's left logic behind and it's become a cult. Madam Deputy Speaker, one of the reasons, and the previous speaker, the member for Blair, brought up, is he said, well, why are we talking about? I put it back to the member for Blair, if he's still there after the pre-selection. I put it back to the member for Blair. If he thinks everything's fine, then he should be able to change the legislation so anything pertaining to the Great Artesian Basin, it becomes a controlled action. because it's not a controlled action at present, and that is the issue. For some unknown reason in this coltish behaviour, we've left the Great Artesian Basin out as a controlled action, so it should come in as a controlled action under the EPBC Act. There are so many things I would want out of the EPBC Act, but I'd actually want that in the EPBC Act. Now, in closing, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Flynn because he has been a champion of this, and if it wasn't for his vociferous approach within party rooms and his absolute dedication to this cause, I genuinely believe this issue would not have been addressed. And the changes that we have seen, both in Queensland at a federal level, would not have happened. And there are a few things that a person does in their political career which they can hang their hat on, and I think the member for Flynn, sitting beside me at this moment, can, in his annals, talk about what he did to save the Great Artesian Basin.
The question is that motion be agreed to. I give the call to the member for Moreton.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak on the motion concerning the Great Artesian Basin, moved by that well-known environmental champion, the member for Flynn. I'll take that interjection by the member for Kennedy. Deputy Speaker, we're heading into election season, and there's a bit of an odour of desperation wafting across the room from those off it. Because when it comes to grasping at straws, then the member for Flynn has a walk-on role in the next Wizard of Oz remake. This motion, criticising a decision made not by this Labor government, but by a delegate of Susan Lee when she was the Minister for the Environment in the former Morrison coalition government. Unbelievable. I remember seeing a photo of the member for Flynn holding up a sign saying, "Save the GAB," the Great Artesian Basin, the GAB, but it looked incomplete to me. What it should have said was, "Save the GAB from my own Environment Minister." This motion has nothing to do with the Albanese government. Labor supported the Senate to conduct a review into the matter, and earlier this year, AgForce too sought a review of the decision made by the now Deputy Leader of the Opposition's delegate in the Federal Court. The Federal Court dismissed the case, so I won't comment further on such matters, but I will say that there is no decision before the government to oppose or reject. I repeat, no decision before the government to oppose or reject. What the member for Flynn is asking the Albanese government to do is not possible and would be unconstitutional. The time to review the decision has long passed, though if there is one thing those opposite have shown in recent weeks, it's that deadlines aren't really their strong suit, are they? What is the state of the Liberal National Parties these days? It's just one step after another, Deputy Speaker. First, they announced some half-baked nuclear policy, the most expensive electricity on earth. Then they couldn't get nominations in on time for local government. And now the member for Flynn is bringing a motion critical of his own deputy leader. You should have just handed it to her in the party room. The truth is, Deputy Speaker, those opposite are an absolute mess. They couldn't organise a rock fight in a gravel pit, really. They've got no alternative vision for this country, and this impotent motion by the member for Flynn is supposed to distract people from the train wreck called his political party. But the member for Farrer isn't the only person the member for Flynn is criticising with this half-baked motion. He's also attacking the leader of the National Party. The leader of the National Party, the member for Maranoa, who not only supported the project but talked it up publicly. The member for Maranoa said, and I quote, "Proud to be investing up to $5 million in the carbon transport and storage company at Millmerran." Now, the member for Kennedy knows that Millmerran is in the member for Maranoa's own electorate. He knew what he was saying. Then once the Nationals leader realised it was going south, he changed his tune and immediately threw the deputy opposition leader under the bus, under the political bus. He said, I quote, "It was a desktop review done by the Environment Minister at the time and she did not get it right." He added, "It was not on her radar to the extent that it should have been." Now, I know the Olympics are over. Paralympics about to start, but Simone Biles would be jealous of that backflip from the member for Maranoa. No accountability, no shame. The leader of the National talks a lot about character in this place, but he doesn't have the character to face his constituents and say, "I'm sorry, I got it wrong." Instead, he ducks for cover and throws the deputy opposition leader under the political bus. This is indicative of the even bigger backflip that the entire National Party is doing on the environment. Now, I know the member for Finn is proud to announce to the world that he's a climate change denier. He's openly suggested that environmental progress furthers the socialist agenda. At least I'm glad this issue has brought out the environmentalist within him. I look forward to see him voting with the government on further environmental and climate reforms in the future. He can start by calling up his friends in the Senate and demanding that they vote for our Nature Positive Bill. It's time for them to support these measures and say yes to the benefits of the strong and independent Environmental Protection Australia. It's time they agreed with tougher penalties for those who break environmental laws. It's time to recognise that better environmental data will inform future planning and decision-making. And it's time to give the green light to more programs, projects, policies and actions to create a nature-positive Australia instead of moving motions like this, ridiculous motions. This motion is nothing but a cheap political attempt to cover the fact that the Nationals stepped in a Liberal bear trap and should never be taken seriously again.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. I give the call to the member for Kennedy.
The member is obviously a member of the Old Country Party, as I myself am, and we've reconstituted that. It's called KP, and we invite him to join us, of course. This is one of the most extraordinary decisions I have ever witnessed in my life. It took me 3 weeks to actually believe that this had been agreed to by a Liberal national government, or by any government on earth. 52% of this nation, I'm sorry, I'll correct that, 1/5 of this nation is only occupied by human beings and kangaroos and wallaroos and birds because of an underground aquifer. There is maybe 30,000 windmills pulling that water up from under the ground, putting it in troughs, so that areas that had never seen a kangaroo in 30 million years, or a bird in 30 million years, suddenly saw kangaroos and birds. Now, on the other side of the coin, when I went to the anti-Chalumba rally, a wind farm rally, they put in that wind farm right beside the jungle. Now, I'm in favour of wind farms at Hewenden, the peak spot in Australia. Yeah, right up. Anyway, what the Speaker said, the professor who was giving the address there to 200 people, he said, what is happening here? What is happening here is that our beautiful nature wonderland is being replaced by an industrial wasteland, because there's only 20 years, 15 years in the windmills and 20 years in the glass. And is anyone going to go out there and replace that rotting disgrace and aberration in the environment? No. I mean, the answers are very, very clear. But the answers are not to remove. If you put that poison into the Great Artesian Basin, and the last speaker before I spoke very well on the dangers of putting that, you contaminate the Artesian Basin. 1/5 of Australia is sterilised. Every single form of life will die. Every single form of life will die. It's taking us 8,000 million to send some electricity out to Mount Isa. It'll take a hell of a lot more than that if you want to pipe water out to any of these areas. One hell of a lot more. The cattle and sheep that have been removed by this imbecilic place that I have to come to, thanks to the people of Kennedy, God bless them, it is actually removed 3/4 of the entire sheep population is gone. The nation's income for 200 years came from wool. And in 1990, when Keating, the Labor Party was formed to deliver arbitration, not just to the working class or the employee class, but to the farmers. And Keating came in and withdrew the arbitration, undermined the arbitration for the employees, I might add, but he withdrew the arbitration for the farmers. And of course, 276,000 farms. He only did one industry war. The rest of it was done by the National Party. They deregulated every single industry. The history books will condemn and spit upon that political party. And I was in that party when it was done, to my shame. But let me go back to the Artesian Basin. Some 10 million tonne of CO2 was being pulled out of the air by cattle and sheep that were in these areas before deregulation. Now, a combination of various anti-farming actions and deregulation and free markets and all that sort of rubbish, ideology, 10 million tonne of CO2 is going into the atmosphere that was not going to the atmosphere before. It was being absorbed by the cattle and sheep. Moo cow might put on 100, 200 kg a year, and that, of course, is carbon pulled out of the air. Now, the removal of trees by the industry, Queensland has removed more trees than any other state in recent memory to make way for glass. Trees have been replaced by glass. I mean, is this a lunatic asylum or what is it? Put the cattle and sheep back, that's 10 million tonne. Put the trees back, that's another 10 million tonne. That's 20 million tonne a year, which is more than the combined efforts of both parties in this place over the last 10 years.
The member's time
and it also
has
makes
expired.
us wealthy. It also makes us wealthy.
The member's time has expired, I think, Member for Kennedy. There being no further speakers, the debate is adjourned and the resumption of the debate will be made in order for the next sitting, and the Federation Chamber stands suspended.